Today is April 21st, 2022. My name is Jessie Paran. I'm one of the co-chairs for Project Steering Committee coming out of beautiful Marin County, as you can see. So with that, John, if you could take us through agenda review.
Yeah, the only action item we have today is related to the minutes, and I know that some people weren't here. We would be asking for you just not to approve every single content item, but maybe if you weren't here, just approve those minutes for the record, and you can specify that. We have so much going on. That's like an understatement of how much we have going on, and we know that the counties even have more going on. So we really want to ground ourselves in the informational items on where we're at in doing our Gantt chart review. We think that's really important, just to sort of lay out what we have in front of us. As we always do, we use our risk and issue management plan. We feel that's good project management to use that and to be very transparent about the risks that we're working on and mitigating on those items. So we want to be able to talk through those. There's a new item on this, and it's called C4 CalSAWS final acceptance. That's a milestone that's in our contract on final acceptance. We're also going to have a CalWin final acceptance afterwards. So we wanted to orient both the PSC and on Friday, tomorrow, the board on what that does mean, what that doesn't mean, and sort of how we're moving forward on that. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on that. There's some action items that we had from our minutes that we wanted to follow up on various things. And some of them related to Los Angeles County and the cutover and some of the cutover activities for them for Benefits Cal and how it's going to be impacting some customers. Of course, we'll have updates on our on reports. We know that there's a lot of work going on reports and claiming with our production counties, and we want to sort of talk through that, and Keith Salas is going to do that. We're going to be talking about Los Angeles County migration to both Benefits Cal and imaging and where we're at on that. And then really dive into where we're at on our first wave. As good project managers, we've been doing some contingency planning and some risk mitigation. So we want to talk through that. I'm excited that Abby Dara from our QA team is going to be talking about a retrospective on the C4 migration, lessons learned, how those things are being applied as we move forward and looking at that. I think that's one thing that the PSC has really sort of focused on, is saying, let's apply those lessons learned. So whatever happened, some of those things we can learn some good lessons on from C4, we can apply to the CalWin migration. And of course, there's always a lot of policy update that's going on. So Karen and Lisa will do that. Ongoing item on multi-factor authentication, procurement updates, and then we always love to hear from our state partners as well as you, the counties, on what's going on. So as Jessie said, very full agenda.
Thank you, John. I just want to take a moment to recognize that Eduardo from Region 2 PSC is actually on the call.
Thank you, Eduardo, for joining, and welcome to PSC. We know that Ethan has moved on, and we are just very grateful that you stepped up for PSC.
Thank you. I do appreciate it, and I apologize for being a couple minutes late here. Some technical difficulties to get on, but here I am, and very happy to be here. So looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Eduardo. At this point, John, you're going to need to remind me, are we moving on to the public opportunity to speak, or do you want a okay, all right.
No, well, I think it's public opportunity to speak on the items
not on the agenda,
and then we'll do the minutes review.
Thank you. So as we mentioned, this is the opportunity to speak on any item not on the agenda. Public comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker, except when a speaker is using a translator, then they will be allowed up to 6 minutes. The public may also speak on any item that is on the agenda by waiting until that item is read, requesting recognition from the co-chair to speak. Please note that all our lines are muted when the meeting begins. So to unmute, when you're connected by the computer, click the microphone icon. And if you're connected by the phone, press *6. And just be mindful, some people may be double muted. So you may need to work through that, as I've learned before. Is there any comment from our public today on any item that's not on the agenda? Okay, we're also trying to watch the chat, hearing none. We're now moving into approval of the minutes from March 17th. Is there a motion from our PSC members?
Hi, good morning, Jesse. This is James Lacritta with Region 5. I'll move to approve.
Thank you, James. Do we have a second?
James Albert from Region 5, and I'll second that.
Thank you, Albert.
Very good. I will go through a vote. So Clarissa, do you approve?
I approve.
Very good. Jesse?
I approve.
Very good. Eduardo, you may not have been on. Do you approve it for the record, but not the content?
I will approve for the record. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Rachel, do you approve?
I approve.
Very good. Vienna?
I approve for the record.
Thank you very much. Cindy, do you approve?
I approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra, do you approve?
I approve.
Thank you. Winna?
I approve.
Thank you. Luther?
Approve.
Thank you. And I don't know if Nympha, have you been able to join yet? All right. So motion passes, Jesse, and I think we can move into our informational items.
Thank you, John. Okay, so this is an eye chart for me all the time, but a very important part of our meeting. So we're now moving on to the CalSAWS Gantt chart review. And for this item, I think we have Arnold, Rachel, and Don.
Thank you, Jesse. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So as John alluded to, there is in a very busy period right now for the project, and just wanted to comment on just the great work and collaboration across all the teams to get us to this point. So we have a very large milestone occurring this weekend as Los Angeles County goes live on both Benefits Cal as well as the new Highland Imaging Solution. So that those activities are actually starting Thursday morning. Then we'll be taking YBN into offline or with a banner page and going through the conversion weekend. So Monday morning when LA comes up, they will be live on both Benefits Cal and Highland. In addition to that, we still have our releases going on with 2205, 2207, and 2209 before we hit our first wave of our CalWIN counties in October of 2022. From there, things continue to accelerate through wave 2 in February, wave 3 in April, wave 4 in June, wave 5 in August, culminating with wave 6 in October. So quite a bit of activity from a CalWIN conversion perspective, as well as ongoing releases for other functional and premise items. So that in a nutshell is where we are going. A lot of work ahead of us, a lot of work accomplished. With that, I'll transition over to Rachel.
Thanks, Arnold. So I'll give a little bit of an update on Benefits Cal. If we could move to the next slide, please. Just to give an overview, a couple of things. We're very excited to bring LA County on board as the 40th county onto Benefits Cal over the course of this weekend. And we also have a new release that is scheduled to coincide with bringing on Los Angeles that will add in additional languages for the release this coming weekend. It will allow customers to get access to their income reporting threshold, and the counties will get access to some additional ad hoc reports. So also a feature-rich release that we have scheduled for this month. We have the complete and final list of all of our languages to meet the BVU requirements scheduled to be done by the end of May. So our last 3 languages will be completed by the end of May. And the team right now is involved in a couple of other design related activities and development related activities. We have a release scheduled for release 4, which is slated to go in July. And then we have an ARPA release, which is slated to go right now to complete our activities associated with design and development later this year in the fall. So we've got some new features that are coming in that the team is very excited about. We will, with the end of release 4, we'll have completed all of our, I'll call it compulsory requirements that we have for Benefits Cal. And then we have a new release that we have just added. So we probably have not talked about release 5 yet. As we have mentioned before, in order to get the ARPA release in, that we did have to move out a couple of features in order to accommodate the ARPA release. And that is the new release 5, which is planned for next January. Okay, if we can move to the next slide, I'll give an update on ISS. In terms of ISS, couple of things. We're hot and heavy in a couple of areas in helping the Wave 1 counties get prepared and ready. That includes just having completed for the CalWIN counties a refactoring set of efforts on their business process flows for the 2B models to incorporate some pending clarifications that were required. The team right now is working with the counties on their change discussion guides, which were submitted on the 12th of April. And so that review is going on right now. And they will be starting additional refactoring sessions with counties effective today for Wave 2 to close out some questions on business process flows, and then we'll roll into change discussion guides for those counties also. And then in terms of training, we have our instructor-led training activities that are the curriculum development that's continuing, and that's going to go through the end of May. And then we do have instructor-led training, or sorry, web-based training and early learning that is going to come into play in the May and June timeframes to start with the counties for Wave 1. So that's where we are right now with the CalWIN ISS project, and I'm going to turn it over to Dawn to give an update on where things are with Central Print.
Thank you, Rachel. So from a Central Print perspective, we don't have a go live going on with the LA this weekend. We are already processing Los Angeles. So we are working on our CalWIN Wave 1 counties at this point. We've been meeting with them to do configuration discussions, both on how we will be handling their print as they move over to CalSAWS, along with any specialty printing that they've been doing with the current vendor or in their own shops in the case of Contra Costa and Tulare. And so we've also just begun to engage the Wave 2 counties with the kickoff meeting and working through with everyone as to how they will be onboarded in their individual wave. And from an ongoing basis, we continue to supply print for the 40 counties currently on CalSAWS, and we are accomplishing getting out several million pieces per month in our ongoing support of those 40 counties. And with that, I think we are done with the Gantt chart, so I will turn it back for questions.
Thank you so much, Dawn, Arnold, and Rachel. And I only joke about the eye chart. I think the denser the Gantt chart, I think the more it speaks to the flurry of activity that is happening with the project and in the counties. So with that, I pause and ask any of our project steering committee members for any questions or comments. Okay, hearing none, do we have any comments from the public? Okay, I think with that, we can move on to item 6, updates on key risks. And this is still pretty much the same group except for Dan.
That's right. So if we can move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So we'll start with issue number or risk number 237, scaling a batch for 58 counties may have an impact on system performance. So we are making good progress on this risk overall. There have been a number of improvements that have gone in that have resulted in meeting the production batch targets for over 30 days now without a miss. In addition, the team is continuing to work on identifying additional items for further tuning and improvement. We also have 3 months of performance testing for Wave 1 scheduled May through July. So Wave 2 performance testing is scheduled for the fall, and combined performance tests for Waves 3 through 6 are scheduled for the end of the year. So making good progress with results that are shown in production today. Dan, do you have anything you'd like to comment on as well?
Yeah, so for the pattern for each one of these, we have about 10 risks we're reviewing today. We'll just provide a little QA color to each one and how we're involved in what we're seeing. For 237, this item actually is a regular weekly meeting we have on Wednesdays to track the daily activities the team is performing. The entire batch schedule is mapped out into what you see here listed as a roadmap, specifically categorized to 6 priorities. Focusing on sort of big bang, what things can we change to improve performance the most from the front end with super triggers and how the data is extracted, to the middle with forms rendering how notices are generated, as well as encryption, and when that occurs, to the very back end with reports ingestion. One thing we're monitoring is as one process speeds up, there's a chance that you could have contention with other processes. So we're also watching that as part of our weekly activities. The team as a whole set objectives for each of those 6 categories. And so far those objectives are being achieved in test. And we just continue to monitor as they roll out into production that the results we see in test are achieved in production as well. This risk will be active through all 6 of the CalWin waves, as there's several components for the batch schedule that are county specific. And as those roll in, we'll be watching how they impact the schedule as well. Back to you, Arnold. Yep.
All right, so continuing on to risk 256, imaging scalability, performance degradation, and operational process risk may impact the go live dates for upcoming counties. Significant amount of work has occurred since the September go live in addressing both defects as well as performance concerns. Enhanced performance testing was completed earlier in April. I'll be doing a deep dive a little further on in the presentation to discuss the performance improvements have been implemented into production as of last Friday. And initial indications from the 39 counties are that they are seeing the benefits with some very much improved performance. So from that perspective, we did have green light with Los Angeles County last night, to where the results of the performance were reviewed and everybody approved with the green light process. So we will continue to monitor this as Los Angeles County goes live. And further on, there's another risk associated with the CalWin counties. Dan, I'll let you add further commentary as well.
Yeah, briefly on this, QA has focused on 2 different areas. One from a performance perspective, we're participating with the Collective Consortium, Accenture, and Highland teams on all the load testing and performance testing that's occurred to date. And then we also have a functional test analyst who's been participating with the counties as they focus on their functional activities. Our analyst is focused on all the different file types and file sizes and how those are being processed through the system. As Arnold mentioned, I think there's a very good summary of this coming up in topic 10 for PSC, so we'll defer the rest of it to that part.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on to risk number 258, the CalWin conversion cutover window is at risk completing past the 84-hour cutover window. So overall progress continues to be made on this as well. The development schedule has been completed. We are going to be presenting that cutover schedule to WCDS, CalSAWS section directors and leadership, and the PSC and JPA members in upcoming meetings. Wave 1 mock conversion results we leverage to reassess the risk and determine mitigation steps for Wave 2 through 6. And options are being investigated to reduce the amount of historical data to be included in the conversion event. So we are looking at both testing and validating the conversion process, as well as ways to streamline the amount of data coming over in the conversion events. Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, for this one, we had a very similar risk in C4. This is a higher risk on CalWIN with the C4 counties. You basically had a very similar data model between C4 and LRS. So it was a matter of taking what was and inserting it to what is when the structures are similar. With CalWIN, the structures are very dissimilar. So there's a significant amount of effort required for transformation. So that's one of the areas that we are focused on monitoring with the teams. And then some of the mitigation measures here as well related to if there's an opportunity for historical archive data to push those items later in the process. Also, we need to monitor the growing caseloads, make sure that those numbers are included in our modeling for go live.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. Rachel, I'll let you talk through 262.
Perfect. And I'm going to have Abby join me from QA on this one as well. As we have talked about before, the counties have been requesting information to be provided in a fashion that gives the counties enough time to respond and make sure that the counties are ready for their respective activities that lead up to go live. And so I wanted to provide an update on two items in particular. We had been, over the course of the last 4 weeks since we last met from the PSC meeting, made some significant updates to the work plans for the wave 1, wave 2, and now the wave 3 counties, and working on wave 4. That incorporates more details from the cross project dependencies, making sure that we've got more clarity on ownership, and those are getting republished. Now, what that will require then is a walkthrough with the counties to reorient them to the changes that have been incorporated into these revised work plans, and then the associated checklists. So we are going to be walking through with the counties and doing a deep dive. That would be an on-site effort where we would be coming out to the counties to walk through each particular area of the work plan, as the counties are actually getting their work plans, to make sure that people are familiar with what's being, what is needed for the county specific related tasks. So that's one update I wanted to provide. The second item was that we have heard from the counties the need to have more direct access to individuals on the project that have the subject matter specific knowledge on particular items. And there may be, very specific nuances and scenarios that need an equivalent of a SME to be brought in to have those conversations. And so we have taken that feedback back. We will be coming back to the counties with a revised process around what that will look like to get the questions from the county, so that there is I'll say there's a more immediacy in getting the response back to the county, so that the counties can move forward with the decisions that they have. But leading up to where we are for wave 1, just to give a little bit of an update, we're right now at T-7. So the readiness dashboard and packet are going to be coming at T-6. So that will be coming next month. And then we'll start our green light meetings the month following. So those are two upcoming activities, but wanted to share the updates on the work plan checklist as well as on the access to information. Abby, I don't know if you want to add anything else to this from a QA view.
Yes, so thanks, Rachel. So for the green light governance, as Rachel had mentioned, the meeting cadence will begin at T-5. We will be bringing the green light governance model back to you hopefully next month. We've been working on that, identifying the dates for the meetings, and we hope to be able to communicate that out very soon. Thank you, Rachel.
All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Arnold and Dan for 263.
Thank you, Rachel. So 263 is related to conversion data or converted data test, defects not being resolved prior to CalWIN UAT start that could impact the user experience for user acceptance test participants. So high priority conversion defects were aligned with Golden Data Set 7, which was delivered earlier this week. Additional resources have been added to the team, as well as CDT testers have been embedded with the conversion team to enable earlier testing of the defects. So the contingency plans are continuing to be developed in case the risk is realized as an issue. The team did meet the targeted number of defects to be completed with golden data set 7, and also on track for the golden data set 8. Dan, would you add some additional commentary?
Yeah, sure. So in the earlier risk where we talked about the 84-hour window, we talked about the challenge of transformation in CalWIN. That was from a timing perspective. This one covers it from a test perspective. We did have a number of defects logged that are currently outstanding. So QA and the test teams are behind where they wanted to be prior to the start of UAT currently. As Arnold mentioned, golden data set 7 was rolled out this week. With a lot of our other defects, we can test quickly as soon as the fix is deployed. With converted data, we need to run the code and rerun the conversion and load it to our test environments to test it. So it takes more time. As Arnold mentioned, we are collaborating with the consortium and Accenture teams on mitigations. UAT is scheduled for June 20th through 8/31. So one of the things we can consider is if there are things outstanding, can those come later in the cycle? Of course, we want to resolve as many of these as we can prior to, and definitely get to the majority of them. So our team this week is just starting to validate the closeout of those items from GDS 7, and we'll also be following through on GDS 8 as well as any hot fixes if those items are prioritized for earlier release.
Thank you, Dan. Let's move on to the next slide. Rachel, we'll turn it over to you for 268.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just do really high level in 268 because I know we have an entire session. So just a preview, 268 is our overarching risk that we are using to track all of these high level risks that in the event any one of them gets to the point where it does cause a need to have a contingency that is executed, that we're just tracking that with this overarching 268. But I'm going to leave the details to when we get to it later on in the agenda. Wendy, is there anything else you wanted to add on this one, since I know we have this as a topic later on?
No, I'll just go wait till later to go through the details. Thanks.
Great. Okay, 269. So on 269, we have been tracking this one around the county's ability to be able to be ready with refactoring their ad hoc reports. Last month that we had reported that the counties had been providing feedback that noted that there was progress being made on the approach to help the counties out with making sure that there's awareness and education around what's available from a refactoring effort. So what we have conducted so far is there has been a series of education sessions so that the counties are familiar with what the existing inventory is of CalSAWS reports, working through a rationalization of which of those reports that are in CalSAWS versus what are in the current county systems today, to get an understanding of where there is a fit between the two of them. And then there is a series of upcoming activities around making sure that the people that are going to actually be building these ad hoc reports are familiar with the database structures and the schemas, so that they know specifically what the ad hoc environment will have available, so they know how to build out those reports when the time comes to build them out. There is some basic refactoring support that the team is providing, and that is in the form of helping the counties with understanding what the data actually is, what it means from a data dictionary viewpoint. And then lastly, there is support that is going to be offered to the counties that in the event that the effort to refactor these reports exceeds what the county's capability is, that there is the option for the county to request additional support from the project to provide some of that additional help. So that's where we are with 269. I don't know, Dan, if you want to add anything else on this one.
Just, I think the two tiers on this are both training and data access. Rachel, I think you did a good job of covering the training items. Our technical team is also monitoring this as far as county access from both a network and security perspective. There's nothing like actually getting to the data itself versus reading about it to make you smarter about it. So that's the other flavor I had. Thanks, Rachel.
Great. Okay, and then 270, Abby, you'll tag team with me on this one. We were tracking a risk associated with making sure that the change discussion guides were giving the counties sufficient information so that the counties could work with their teams to make sure that there was an awareness of what the process-related changes were that were coming into play as counties were moving from CalWIN to CalSAWS. And so we were tracking a number of items. One was that we had a series of reviews of confirming or completing our inventory of the change impacts that the counties would have. And those sessions were completed with all of the Wave 1 counties so that the draft change discussion guide could be submitted on the 12th of April. And it is currently in review right now with the counties, and we are monitoring the comment responses that are coming back both from the consortium, from our QA vendor, from our IV&V vendor, along with the counties. And then our upcoming timeframe associated with the change discussion guides is to turn around the comments that are coming back from the counties by the first week of May, so that there is an additional review period that we've incorporated those comments. Now, one thing just to keep in mind on 270 is that the date that we are monitoring here is that 2 weeks prior to early training, which is May 20th, early training starts on 6/6, is when all of this information needs to be really in the hands of folks to be prepared for that early training. Because the early trainers are going to be the ones largely that will be having some of those conversations. So we have a little bit, I'll call it, of a grace period, but that grace period is small. And so it's something that we are tightly monitoring as the comment responses are coming in. Abby, do you want to add anything to this on 270?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. So yes, so the change discussion guides were submitted on time for the revised deliverable dates. And as Rachel had mentioned, currently the change discussion guides are in county review and consortium deliverable review period. So, so the reviewers are making comments on that. One of the things that we were able to do and work on as a project team, based on the county feedback, is to add a little bit more context into the change discussion guides about what is changing from CalWIN to CalSAWS, and then also provide a little bit more context on the terminology changes. And then a third piece is also really adding a little bit more context on what those changes mean to that specific role. So we were able to work on that as a project team and add that context before this last deliverable review submission version that is now being reviewed by the deliverable reviewers.
And maybe one more to add, Abby, I know that we had received some feedback too, that the counties really would appreciate some context about where they are in CalSAWS. And so the team is also taking that feedback to incorporate a handful of meaningful screenshots from CalSAWS, not trying to replicate the entire system or training for that matter, but pulling in a handful of meaningful screenshots that will help to orient people as they're reading the change discussion guides as well.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Yes, so that was the additional piece of county feedback that we heard that we're also addressing in the change discussion guides.
Great. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Arnold and Dan.
All right, let's move on to the next set. So that's the completion of the high risk. So now we will continue on with our medium risks. So risk number 236 is the scaling of the analytics dashboards and reports where 58 counties may have an impact on system batch performance. So much like what we're doing with the CalSAWS core batch schedule, we're treating analytics as an extension of that schedule as well, identifying additional areas where we can further tune and optimize that so that those reports are being produced on a timely basis as well. There is performance testing that is scheduled in May through July, as well as wave 2 and waves 3 through 6. So we continue to make progress on those reports there, and we're also looking at the tail end of that reporting schedule so that we can make sure that the high priority reports are being published on the expected basis. Dan, I'll let you add additional commentary.
Yeah, this one is obviously related to 237 and will benefit from those tuning activities as the front end of batch speeds up. The back end here related to analytics would benefit as well. So it's related. The only reason it is a different priority, all of the risk factors are identical except for impact. On batch, we're obviously updating the data structures and impact interface partners, and this one is about reports, largely internal to our application. Very important, but if picking between the two, 237 is one that was a high.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on to 264. 264 is related to the imaging application for the Calwin counties and a potential risk of the counties failing to be able to migrate their images on time. Mitigation plans that are occurring as we speak are that we've shared the lessons learned with the counties coming out of the C4 and Los Angeles County migrations. And we're in process for the wave ones of going through test of the export process, the transfer, and the import process as well. So we are keeping a close eye and providing additional support with our partners, Highland and AWS, to support the export and test import processes.
And then for this one, a lot of the risks we've discussed so far are specific to project readiness, the things that the project team can control. This one is about county readiness. It is part of our weekly status reporting and review. Across the 18 Calwin counties, there's about a dozen different legacy imaging systems. So this one is tracking everything from are those existing legacy software vendors in place to support the export processes? Is the mapping correct as part of the transformation? Is hardware in place for those that choose options like loading the data to a snowball? And is the network and security set up to transfer the data for go live?
Thank you, Dan. So then that brings us to our final risk, medium risk 267, which is GAGR, UAT, and county data validation functionality may be delayed past May 2022. So the mitigation strategies here is we had a focused SCR design, impact or assess the impacts to the data model, and evaluated the overall impact to the planning test efforts for the 2205 release. So we are expecting wave 1 to be using converted data. Wave 2 through 6 will validate with new data. And then with county validation, counties will perform the self-paced case reviews and comparisons in order to validate against the requirements.
And so this one started its history focused on UAT and the 43 county data set and providing an opportunity for the wave 2 through 6 Calwin counties to test with their data, which is how the county data validation process became part of our planning. This is currently evolving this week also to functionality. The remaining pieces of GAGR were originally planned for 2205. There are some emerging gaps we're talking about this week that may be in 2207 or the July release. So that would still be in time for UAT. We're actually having a meeting tomorrow to discuss this. So this is an emerging medium item. When we come back next month may show as a high, simply from that factor.
Thank you, Dan. So with that, I know we've covered a lot. Jesse, I'll turn it over back to you for questions.
Thank you, Arnold, Dan, Rachel, Abby. There were a lot. So thank you for the level of detail, and just really appreciate the project, taking in and listening to a lot of feedback. I know in some of the spaces and meetings I've been, there was a lot of feedback on the materials, the change discussion guides, and just how to add a little bit more context. So there's a more understanding from the counties of exactly what is changing. So I just wanted to call that out specifically and thank the project for making those changes. Before I ask my peers to provide their comments or question, I had a question about 237. Well, first a comment. I thank you for calling out that this risk will be present or at least have visibility through the different waves, because that was going to be my question. So it's good to know. Dan, you mentioned something about like 6 things that you're watching or 6 indicators that is related to this particular risk. Would you know off the top of like what those are?
Yeah, I do. I might have stated it incorrectly, Jesse, but in short, the batch schedule has hundreds of things in it. So we've categorized them into various components. There's really, if you looked at our roadmap, about 20 components, and then we call it our top 6 that we're monitoring each week. So the first one is super triggers, where your data is extracted at the front. The second is ABOD processing, which has a lot of functionality that's been deferred, but happens to be a long-running activity. So we've been able to update that process. Encryption, forms rendering, ingestion of reports, and then specifically how some of the queries associated with DCFS processing had a large opportunity for tuning to have an impact. So we started with these 6, and then we move through the others as well. Usually as you clear the backlog of priorities, other things will rise up because they're now showing as the next things to take action on, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. And then I had a question about 264, which is marked as a medium risk. I was wondering, I think in my mind, I'm more thinking on impact. So in my mind, this felt more like a red, but maybe there is something that goes behind how something is weighted as a risk. Maybe is it a probability or something else for 264 regarding like legacy vendors and all the things that are involved. That's really more a county readiness piece.
Yeah, I could go ahead, Arnold.
I was going to say, and this was also taking the lessons that we learned out of the C4 image migrations and the challenges that we had there, as well as with Los Angeles. And so we've baked those in earlier into the schedule with those wave 1 counties and also the wave 2s in order to get through the logistics of the move as well for the physical move of that. And then from a county readiness perspective, with the enhanced communications that have been implemented with the run up with the 39 counties and currently in production in Los Angeles County getting ready to go into production. We've been publishing and refining both the training as well as communications and the how-tos of how to optimize the use of the system. So we're front loading that into the process, and we're seeing some of the benefits of that based upon where those wave 1 counties are, which is why this is at a medium level at this point in time. Dan, I contribute to that as well.
Yeah, I would just add, you kind of nailed it, Jesse. It's the probability piece to it across the 18 counties. This is one of the risks that is part of our weekly status reporting on Monday, where the imaging team reports out on progress by wave across the 18 counties. There have been issues highlighted. Some of the examples I gave were misunderstandings of how to map things, the snowball didn't arrive, or the legacy vendor contract had to get finalized. And as each of those have been highlighted, trigger dates have been set, and so far they've been actioned. So it hasn't come to a situation where things have been deferred and or they've been able to adjust dates and continue to make progress. So I think good insight by you, but across the 18 counties, it hasn't come to a place where it's going to change wave plans specific to this risk yet, but we do talk about it every month.
This seems to be also the place where having a wave and having that learning happen by waves, the later waves learning from prior waves can help mitigate the risk. So thank you for walking us through that. PSC members, any comments or questions so far on these risks?
Hi, this is Sandra Boland from Riverside. I just had a question, and you may be addressing that later on, but for risk level 256 for the for this current wave that's with the go live for Monday, and I did hear that you may be talking about contingency plans later on, so I'll hold if that's going to be addressed for Monday's go live.
Yes, we'll be doing more of a deep dive on the imaging and the weekend's events in one of the topics coming up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Topic 10.
Thank you, Sandra. Any other comments or questions from our PSC? Do you have any comments from the public? Okay, with that, we can move on to our next item.
Okay, I will continue to cover the C4 CalSAWS final acceptance preview. So the purpose of this topic is to introduce the concept of a CalSAWS migration final acceptance. As John referred to before, this is a milestone that it really translates into a release of a payment for completion of the original scope of the CalSAWS migration. This is a preview in which I will be overviewing current performance of the system as well as the status on defects, and then looking forward in May for approaching for approval for final acceptance or potential special dispensation from project leadership with Director Bouet. So overall, what I'll be covering in the next couple of slides is just the current status, how we're doing against performance in the SLAs, review of the defects. And this will be a preview showing the last 30 days. And then in May, I'll be coming forward with the final results and observations for the next 30 days. That'll cover the April timeframe. So as I mentioned before, this is an interim milestone. We'll be having another one associated with the CalLink conversions. If we move on to the next slide, please. So just talking briefly over the path that we had. So March 4th, 2019, the project commenced with the DD9 conversion for the CalSAWS accounts or counties. Then in October 2020, systems design deliverables were complete. A UAT was complete in August of 2021. Training and OCM activities occurred for the C4 users. On September 23rd, the conversion weekend is where we actually brought the 39 counties onto the same system that LA was currently operating on. We sunsetted the C4 system as a result of that conversion event, and the data center, C4 data centers were decommissioned in December of 2021. Since then, the 40 counties have been using the CalSAWS system over the last 6 months since that September conversion event. And then we started after the stabilization activities, we started the process for the final acceptance period, which is where we find ourselves today. And so with step 8, we'll be going through the initial criteria for the final acceptance, and then we'll be approaching the board, right, and the steering committee for final acceptance approval during the May 13th meeting. So that releases the one interim payment. Then we'll be going through the CalWIN cutovers between October of 2022 and October of 2023, and culminating with a final acceptance request in 2024 after the system is proved to be performant and meeting the requirements for all 58 counties. So that's the roadmap that we are on. This is, again, the first interim milestone for final acceptance. If we move to the next slide, please. So just an overview, there were 445 total requirements for the C4 counties migration, delivered by 71 contract deliverables, 978 SCRs delivered via the releases from 1911 to 2107, and over 500,000 work hours worked. So on September 27th, the 18,000 C4 users migrated to CalSAWS, and the system's currently supporting the 40 counties, over 34,000, with over 34,000 users, and serving over 11 million residents. It's one of the largest integrated eligibility systems in the world. We completed updates to the CalSAWS online help and configured and installed the LMS for the migration WTs, training the 39 migration counties. We completed the C4 counties cutover 6 hours ahead of schedule, and we provided post-deployment support through December 17, 2021. We've continued to provide support focusing on remaining defects and questions coming from the overall users, and will continue to do so as the system continues to evolve and release additional releases. If we move on to the next slide.
Hey, Arnold, Could I jump in briefly there?
Absolutely, Dan.
Okay, so there's a little gold check mark here, and there's a few other slides that have that. And those are the areas where I'm just going to provide a little color from a QA perspective. So what this little donut shaped chart comes out of is our requirements tracking tool. That was loaded when the project started in 2019. And all stakeholders really dive into that tool. One, to look at what the requirements are, what was stated, and you can attach things to it like test artifacts or other things as things get completed. So the evolution of this is you load it and then you mark things as in plan when they start to be action, and you mark them as met when they are completed. So QA has done an independent assessment of that tool and query. There's about 20 specific areas, and we rolled up to the same exact count, 445. There are other counts out there. They are specific to other areas of the project, like requirements for CalWIN that are not yet completed, and or imaging and call center. But we can confirm from a QA perspective the 445, and that they have the appropriate test artifacts or other artifacts to confirm completion. Thanks, Arnold.
Thank you, Dan. If we move on to the next slide. So the CalSAWS final acceptance deliverables include the following. A 30-day consecutive final acceptance period that is focusing on the results of the performance requirements, outstanding open non-cosmetic defects for the migration-related SCRs deployed by releases in 1911 through 2107, summary of key lessons learned and recommendations for improvements to the CalSAWS software, as well as the updated requirements traceability matrix, reporting status of the C4 counties migration requirements from the CalSAWS DD9 statement of work requirements. There are additional items that we're going to be covering outside of the final acceptance, and that includes imaging, accessibility assessment, CalWIN migration, and ongoing maintenance and operations. So we'll be covering those as informational items outside of the scope of the CalSAWS final acceptance. We move on to the next slide, please. So overall, this is a snapshot of the 20 SLAs that are currently documented and tracked for the CalSAWS system. And if we look at the performance over the last 30 days, we have met all but 2 of those SLAs. The system from a performance and availability perspective has met. The 2 areas that I'll be getting into more detail on in subsequent slides refer to help desk diagnosis time, as well as availability of the training environments, in which those 2 were not met or did not meet the SLA standard. If we move on to our QA, Dan, just back up a slide. Dan, you can comment as well from a QA perspective.
Yeah, sure, briefly. The QA team participates in regular meetings to review all of these SLAs. Where you see the gold check mark, we've confirmed that those details support that it's been met. Where you see the green check mark, we agree that it has not been met, and that comes from looking through all the various logs over a period of time. These are specific to March. So in May, we'll be coming with the April update. Thanks, Arnold.
Thank you. And if we move on to the next slide. So if we, as I mentioned before in the summary, the CalSAWS system has been stable and available for users and met all system related performance response time requirements. There were 2 non-system performance requirements missed. And so the details of that was on the help desk diagnosis team or time. And this is the amount of time to diagnose the root cause for the tickets that are being submitted through the ServiceNow system, through the service desk. Target is having those completed within a 98% of the time versus the actual performance of 81%. And that's just within the allocated time frame for meeting or resolving those. The other component is on number 15, the availability of the training systems during the business hours on March 9th, where the training environment was unavailable for 55 minutes on the 9th due to a systemic issue. And that was the miss during that 30-day period during the month of March. If we move to the next slide, please. So as we double click a bit into the monthly diagnosis time, of the over 3,288 tickets closed in March, 613 of those did not meet the SLA targets. And it's roughly 81.35% of it did meet. So of those, approximately 50% of them were related to user requests for information rather than system issues or system defects. Approximately 27% of the tickets pertain to imaging, 54% pertain to the CalSAWS application. If you double clicked within the 613 that missed the SLA, approximately 30% were eligibility related. And those require additional research time to the uniqueness of the case and going through the process of the calculation and the qualification rules. And that it resulted in the elongated diagnosis times. Approximately 67% of the requests for additional information and procedures and were not determined to be system errors or the issue could not be recreated. So as we looked back and reflected on those tickets, we've created an action plan that we're currently implementing to conduct refresher and awareness training for both the county and the project help desk staff for quicker ticket response to county users. If it's more of a how-to, we're enhancing the guides that are available to both those county and the centralized responses so that we can intercept the ticket and get the answer back to the submitter in a quicker fashion. We're also working to identify trends in that ticket data and send CIT guidance to users for commonly asked questions so that we can include the tips and tricks that may give them some of the answers to avoid having to submit the ticket in the first place. So more of a self-help component. This allows the reduction in ticket volumes and allows help desk staff to surface on the system-related, defect-related tickets. If we move to the next slide, please. This is just a breakdown of the categorization of the 613 tickets that missed. And so you can see through those top three categories that there were questions that were not related to system error. It was questions that had how-to steps provided, unable to recreate the issues, as well as in that fourth category, you see the defects. So the team is diving into each one of these categories and taking lessons learned so that we can determine how to reduce the overall numbers as well as the average time to handle. We move on to the next slide, please. So then this slide addresses the incident that we had on March 9th around the production training environment in which it was unavailable for 55 minutes. The reason why it became unavailable was due to a systemic issue to where the system ran out of space to be able to handle the number of restore points that it had, which allows us to back the system up to known states in the past. Corrective action has been taken, has been to reduce the number of those restore points with that decision aligned with the training team, as well as increase overall space allocation for reserve in the event of systemic growth. We can move on to the next slide, please. So that's an overview of where our performance has been over the last 30 days. And so our next steps as we prepare for the May 22nd meeting are listed below. So we're going to continue to report on the performance requirements for the 30-day consecutive final acceptance period, which is occurring now to the May 13th meeting. We're continuing to focus on the monthly help desk diagnosis team. We are focused obviously on the Los Angeles County cutover for the CalSAWS imaging system occurring this weekend. And we're continuing to focus on the support of the C4 counties following the cutover to CalSAWS as the questions continue to be surfaced and answered. Assuming that the CalSAWS system is stable and will continue to meet the system related SLAs, and the help desk diagnosis time continues to exceed the SLA targets because there's a number of complex factors there. The project may request the consortium executive director's discretion for providing the CalACES migration final acceptance upon also agreeing with the continuing action plans to further address any deficiencies that may occur with the SLAs. We move on to the next slide, please. So talking a point around the defects, the final on April 18th, we resolved the final defect related to the C4 migration SCRs. That was a Medi-Cal caseload report display. The defect was delivered via the 2204 18th, so the release on the 18th of this month, minor release. With regards to reports, we do understand that there are still outstanding questions there, and we have a topic coming up in which we'll be doing more of a deep dive on the specific actions being taken there on the state fiscal reports. And then just as a normal course of action, as defects arise, they will continue to be prioritized and implemented as part of the ongoing maintenance activities for the CalSAWS system. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So Dan, I'll turn this over to you to provide your perspective on the final acceptance as well.
Thanks, Arnold. This really pulls out of the overall requirement for final acceptance, the things that QA is monitoring. We have gone through the deficiency logs and we have confirmed update to the requirements traceability matrix, as we discussed earlier. The little open boxes are items we'll be working to close between now and May with the Accenture team. The main item there is verification that the CalSAWS software has performed for 30 consecutive days. You did see a couple of open items related to the SLAs that we highlighted, and then the other items are largely administrative. And then the final bullet here is just assuring that QA's participation does not end at final acceptance. Here we of course have one more, and then we're part of regular M&O activities as highlighted below. I did want to go back briefly to slide 24, if that's okay. That was related to some of the help desk diagnosis times. And towards the bottom here, we talk about county support processes. Another member of our QA team, Gretchen Williams, has been involved in our strike team to work on continuous improvement in that area. So I wanted to invite her to make comments for a couple minutes related to these activities.
Good morning, Dan. Thank you, everyone. Happy to join and provide a little bit of context. As you'll hear in a lot of the updates today, focus on communication from a project perspective, which is a priority. So as a proactive response to county feedback, the CalSAWS project has initiated a strike team, as Dan had referenced, specific to evolution of communication initiatives. So we wanted to provide a little bit of awareness to the group on the broader efforts that are being applied here. Experiments will be conducted on specific communication methods. This is around sharing project information with the intent of doing so in a more user-friendly format, more easily shared and consumed by users. So you'll hear that consistently throughout some of the messaging today. Note that the specific experiments that will be focused on through the strike team will be focused on how to evolve complex communications. And this is around areas for system changes or enhancements and key areas such as imaging, reports, correspondence. Another area that the group will be focusing on is looking at how we continue to evolve current communication methods that folks in the counties are familiar with, such as CITs and the web portal. So to identify and oversee the effectiveness of these experiments, the strike team will be facilitating interactive focus sessions that will include county participants. So many of you may have seen the CRFI that was released this week. The details on the session format, which is intended to be very interactive, are included in that CRFI. We're inviting up to 3 representatives per county to join us. So we welcome that engaged participation. And then for those individuals that will be participating, there'll also be information that's shared in advance to help those individuals prepare. We want to ensure that, that they're able to socialize some concepts and such within the county. So when they come to the session, they are in fact representing the broad county in their feedback. That session will be scheduled on May 25th. So we encourage you to take a look at that CRFI, and we welcome participation. The final area of focus that I'll share is that in addition to the evolved communication efforts within the counties, we're also working with CWDA and the committee chairs. This is to establish a process to ensure that questions that are raised or issues that are presented in CWDA meetings that we are organizing to assign, address, and follow up on these items that are raised are in an efficient and effective manner. So we wanted to just take a moment here to share more broadly awareness around the activities that are occurring for this particular strike team. So thank you for that time, Dan. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gretchen. Back to slide 29, and I think that puts a bow on it. Arnold?
All right. So let's move on to slide 30, please. So just the informational items. If you take a look at this, and we have another topic coming up on the CalSAWS imaging project, and as well as the state and fiscal reports. So we have 2 specific deep dives coming up on that. So let's move on to the next, please. We'll take a pause there, and Jesse, I'll turn it over for you for questions before we move to our next topic.
Thank you, Arnold. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Gretchen. Are there any comments or questions from our PSC members on this item, C4 CalACES final acceptance?
I do, Jesse. This is Cindy from
Hi, Cindy.
Region 4. Hi, good morning. I wanted to ask a question or get maybe some further direction or comment on the help desk ticket issue and diagnosis time. I'm wondering if possibly there is an escalation process that perhaps could be put in place, or is there some other kind of escalation process that could be put in place when we see that there are help desk tickets that are way out of the normal range of response? I know we generally will raise them up to our RMs, but I'm wondering, is there something in the system or something where we can get a faster response to our concern? Possibly in the process, maybe we're missing, or maybe there's something that could be developed in that aspect.
Yeah, Cindy, I'll go ahead and take that away, because I know that there are ways to escalate within the system, as well as we have touch points with the region managers that we can use where this can come up as a escalation form as well. So I'll go ahead and take that away, and we can say this is how, and we'll go ahead and present a CIT around the appropriate escalation path that we can use on these tickets, both through the system as well as through the other communication channels that we have available.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's a great idea, Cindy. It just made me think about, is there like a flag or something for people, for the system to know, like, hey, this has been sitting out there for quite a while.
Yeah.
So did I hear it right that this is going to be taken back at the next?
Yes.
PSC? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll capture it as an action item and report back.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. This is Sandra Bolin. So you showed the data for the last 30 days for March for performance measures. Do we know how many months we've met those performance measures?
So March was the first month where we had 0 misses. April continues. Prior to those, we do have months where we did miss those measures, specifically right after go live. I think we had 5 batch misses, and then during February it was coming down to 2. So March was the first month where we had 0.
And Sandra, this is John. We have a pretty robust process where we review all of the SLAs on a monthly basis and go over a performance report. And if there is any misses, if there are damages tied to particular SLAs, we go in and assess those and put those in as a normal course of business. If it's the desire of project steering committee to sort of have a retrospective review over, the last few months of where we're at. This was specific to the upcoming final acceptance for C4 CalSAWS as we come up. So we reported on that. But if there's a desire to have sort of a longer retrospective view of the SLA performance, we could definitely provide that.
Thank you.
So Sandra, I'll take that as that you would like to see that.
Yeah,
And
sorry. Yes, it would be nice to see how we've improved through the process and how long we've actually met the measures.
okay. So what we'll do is we will make sure that we provide those reports and those items and disseminate those through your regional managers to get those out. And then if there's any questions or anything else like that, or you'd like something added back onto the project steering committee agenda, just please let me know, drop me an email, but we'll disseminate sort of that retrospective view of that through your regional managers.
Thank you. I appreciate it. A summary is perfect of how we've been doing. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Before moving on to public comment, I did want to just say thank you. I appreciated hearing from Gretchen about those strike teams and especially the piece around the outreach to the specific CWDA committees. For most of the counties, our experience is there's so much information being pushed out and they're in very different spaces. So to have a process to gather all of that, I think makes me it's very encouraging to hear that. So just want to say thank you. Any other comments from our PSC or questions?
Hi, Jesse. This is James McCurdy with Region 5. Just a quick question and perfect landing page on here for that question. It's the unable to recreate the issue and 88 of the tickets associated to that. Arnold, maybe you can touch on a little bit. What is the progression? How do we manage that when the help desk agent can't recreate the issue? Is that then escalated? Is that is the help desk agent then reaching out to the person that created the ticket? I'm just curious if there's a different set of eyes that look at this to make sure that we are exhausting resources and really identifying, is this a system issue? Is this something from a user issue? Just interested what happens then when we're unable to recreate the issue.
Yeah, so the ticket ultimately gets, or may start in the county, end up at the project service desk, and then ultimately end up in what we call our tier 3 or level 3 support team, which are the deep functional experts. So that's a series of the set of eyes that are looking at the issue and working with the user who reported the issue to try and identify the specific steps or what are the data characteristics associated with the case in trying to exhaust and looking through the back end as well at the actual underlying database and the values there and the system processing to go through the analysis to understand what drove the behavior that caused the issue in the first place. And so just that natural progression as well as some of that research, it's occurring with multiple people or multiple tiers. And that's sometimes what takes the time, the elongated time, because the longer it takes for it to get and looked at from the tier 3, that's where we're seeing some of the challenges with the recreation and being able to meet that SLA.
Thanks, Arnold. And just another quick follow-up question too on the top 2 trends, the not a system error with an explanation, and then the the steps to proceed provided. And the slide before we touch on, or maybe it was a slide after, about how one of the action items is gathering information and getting that to not only the help desk agents, but to county staff as well. And those 2 top trends from my lens, I think they're incredibly impactful if we're packaging this kind of information up and getting it to the counties to make sure that there is, a training or information getting to the staff to make sure that they are positioned, that we're not calling in trouble tickets erroneously. So can you touch on a little bit about what does that look like, again, packaging this up, identifying what are those common trends, and getting it to the counties so we have an opportunity to see and look and say, hey, here's a training opportunity that we have for our staff. Here's a reminder. Here's a flyer, something of that nature.
Yes, and this is also related to what Gretchen was talking about around the communications kind of action team that we have mobilized. Because we are realizing that when we're responding to the tickets, we're putting the detailed actions, the links to the training into the ticket. So that's addressing the need of that individual user, versus if we have 10 users asking the same question, that's now triggering and saying, okay, if there's 10, there's probably more than 10 as you look across all the counties that are using it. And so that's where we're looking at enhancing the communications through the action team, as well as through the CITs to do some of those training flashes or potential short videos that are the quick trips, and enhancing the communications to be able to address that. So that's part of the action plan as we're looking forward and identifying those trends of those common questions that are coming through.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arnold. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from our PSC? Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Arnold. Moving on to the next item.
Thank you, Jessica.
I think this is Rachel now, right?
Oh, I think we were going to go to the
Hi, Lisa.
accessibility slides. Good morning, Jesse.
Yeah, there's a couple of advanced
One more
others.
slide, I think.
There you go.
All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. So one of the informational items we wanted to talk through this morning was around accessibility. So casting our minds back to last year, we had an ORR, an operational readiness review with CMS before go live. One of the findings, or one of the recommendations, I should say, from CMS was to conduct an assessment around accessibility, and had been some time since one of those was done on the core CalSAWS application. And as we know, accessibility standards, like many standards, evolve and change over time. We also updated the system with new pages and other changes throughout the migration period. So it was acknowledged that we would conduct an assessment. We do know that, we have counties production across our 40 production counties that have individuals who do use screen readers on the CalSAWS system today. And that, the system has gone through these tests before, but we wanted to do something more current. So you may recall, different meeting, but back in January, late January, the board did approve a contract change to bring on a third-party vendor to do this assessment. This assessment it's very time limited because we need to complete this assessment before we meet with CMS again on May 10, which is right around the corner. So given the time sensitivity, we looked at getting the most impactful number of pages assessed based on system transaction volume. So we know that about 60% of our transactions occur across 40 core pages. And some of these will probably sound very familiar. The home page, our case summary, application registration, journal pages, task pages, distributed documents, person search. So these are all very frequently used transactions and pages in the system. So the vendor has been assessing those pages. In addition to that, we're looking at many global components across the application, things like the global navigation, local navigation, the task navigation on the left, as well as the calendar, which is used on many pages as well. So all of these things are in this process right now. It's been a combination of different browsers that are being used for testing, as listed here on the slide, as well as automated screen reader tools, manual testing, and keyboard testing. Can we get through the application without landing in any keyboard traps? So this is all in process as we speak, and we're not rushing, but rapidly moving through and assessing these items and getting to completion targeted for early May. Next slide. So I'll just highlight a couple of things. We did see a couple of findings that we have seen. Most of it is on the back end of the system, making sure that field names are unique, that frames have unique titles. There were a couple of front end findings. For example, on our calendar icon, it's the third-party product that we have, and as you can imagine, that's on many pages, any search page in the application. This is a global feature. We did see that based on latest accessibility standards, that we need to update the color contrast ratio when a date is picked. So that's something that's in flight. On the office schedule page, if anyone's looked at that one, there's a lot of detail on that page. We're adding in a tooltip there, so as people move across the different workers, different time slots, the different colors, it actually will tell you exactly what that availability is versus having to read the legend. We also have some minor changes on the homepage and a change to our help icon, actually, to remove the text and just have the question mark and the text is to the right. So at this point, some very few front end changes, but I just wanted to highlight there is a couple coming in the May timeframe. So, we are also looking at not only this one-time assessment, we are also, this is something that is ongoing. We do have another set of pages that we're planning to assess through the summer and into early fall. And again, we're going through the process of refreshing the tool set that our development team has to make sure that as we add new pages or change pages, that we're doing those tests as we move through the development life cycle with the major releases. So that's a quick highlight of the accessibility. There'll be more to come next month. We also know we have had inquiries from some of the Calwin counties. I know some of the RMs have had inquiries there. Counties have access to the sandbox if they want to use their tools in that environment. That is currently something that they are able to do as well. And with that, that's the quick summary of the accessibility assessment that's underway.
Thank you, Lisa. And great to hear the progress on accessibility for all our users. I did have a question. What is, I heard that most of this is in the back end, but for people who are, if there's changes to how things look, like colors and certain icons, how is that going to be communicated just through the regular CIT process?
Yeah, we'll likely do a CIT. We have 2 system change requests at this point. So we will actually, in addition to just saying we'll do a CIT, we'll make sure we get with Gretchen and the team to see that that is the most effective manner to get out to the most number of users, given we are focused on communication. But yeah, we definitely will be communicating those changes as they go out.
Excellent, thank you.
Jesse.
I know we have staff who remove one thing and they will notice one thing on the screen. They were like, what happened to this icon I used to click on? So that's very helpful. Any questions or comments from our PSC? Yeah, I had one more question. Is this something that we will keep? Because I see there's a meeting on May 10 with CMS. Is this something that we will hear about in future PSC meetings? This item on accessibility?
As well on this one, and then periodically, yeah.
Okay, I heard yes.
Sorry, John.
Audio kind of broke off there, but I think I heard yes.
Yeah, we could get it back on. I think the review with CMS and DHCS is a broader meeting. This is one portion of that. So we'll have both. We'll put both of these things back on a future PSC agenda.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
I didn't hear any comments or questions from our PSC. Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to our next item.
Thanks, Jesse. Wanted to give an update from the last PSC meeting. There was a request to, oh, did we go to the wrong slide? Hold on one second. I think we do have the wrong, can we move forward 2 slides just really quick, if we could? One more? There we, There we go. Wanted to just give an update on an outstanding, and thanks Gabby for coming on with me here. Wanted to give a little bit of an update on a request that came from the counties around, or actually I believe it was from our public comment around understanding that when Benefits Cal and YBN, or when YBN is offline during this period of time over the weekend, what would be available so that the community-based organizations could continue to serve individuals, especially given the program timelines that have come up around the folks that are 50 and older in the Medi-Cal population. And so wanted to just give a little bit of an update on a couple of things. One is around communication, and then what that support really will look like. So a couple of items here in terms of upcoming planned communications. We did get the green light to reinitiate the communications that are going out to the public. And in the public, it's actually communications that are going out to our customers. And so we have sent out reminder and notification emails that have gone out to customers, as well as those that have subscribed and noted that their preferred communication method is a text message. So we've sent out SMS messages, as well as those that have been using the YBN mobile app is doing a push notification as well. So it's to orient individuals about the awareness that YBN is going to be coming offline, and to encourage folks, especially on things like the unsubmitted apps, to complete those before YBN is taken offline. So we've got a number of communications that have actually gone out to individuals that are current users of the existing YBN portal, the web version, as well as the mobile application. If we could go to the next slide. Wanted to give an update specifically about the support request. So what we had heard was what is going to be available for support, and we thought it would be best just to reference the message that is going to be on the YBN application to let folks know about what's happening during that cutover period. And so I'll just walk through what this contains. So Benefits Cal is going to be the replacement for YBN. They're going to get a notice that it's currently down. And Gabby, correct me if I'm wrong, that is now planned for 1 p.m. on Friday. Okay, 1 p.m. on Friday. And there will be a link that's displayed in this message to say that if people are still looking to seek services for Medi-Cal and CalFresh, that there will be more information to seek alternative sites. And those alternative sites are for Medi-Cal, directing them to Covered California, and for CalFresh, directing them to Get CalFresh during the period of time when YBN is down and LA County has not fully moved over to Benefits Cal. And then for GR and CalWorks, the note that we have is for any programs that are included that they would come back once they are, once LA is up on the system on Monday, and they could request services for GR or for CalWorks as of Monday. It's a short update, Jesse, on this one, but just wanted to provide what that support would look like. So we would be redirecting individuals to other sites during that outage period.
Thank you, Rachel and Gabby. I just, if you can go back to slide 37, I want just to note for the public who's maybe following along online, I think the posted slide deck has different dates from what you have reflecting here. I think the posted one has a mobile app push number 2. So just to confirm that that is not the case, because I think there says that was supposed to have happened on the 20th.
Correct. That second mobile app push notification will not be posted, but we are seeing great effectiveness and outreach of the emails and messages we've sent. In fact, our last email that we sent has now more than 51% open rate, which is record breaking. So I think we're reaching folks through these channels, and then LA County is running an amazing social media campaign. So the word is definitely out, and we'll be there to support.
Okay. What's a typical open rate if 50% is pretty good?
20 to 25% is a good average across industries. That's a great average across industries. So more than 51% is record breaking and awesome. So we hope everyone understands what the change is, and we'll be there to support post-go live.
Great, thank you, Gabby. Any questions or comments from our PSC? Okay, any comments from the public?
Yes, hi, my name is Marcella. I just wanted to mention, so for the emails that we're going out to clients who use YBN, will you be notifying them of the system being down as of 1 p.m.? Because I know several clients mentioned to me that they received the emails and they state 6 p.m. So end of business day Friday. And then also CBOs and other advocates. I think our understanding is also that it'll be down by 6 p.m., not 1 p.m.
Yeah, that time change to move it up from 6 p.m. to 1 p.m. Was confirmed with LA County around 4 or 5 o'clock yesterday. So it's a hot off the press, kind of a late breaking event. LA County is posting out content to their social media channels, and then Benefits Cal is updating our announcement on our website as well, so that folks have the info that they need in advance. Yep.
Do you by any chance know if LADPSS will be updating that also on the website? Like on the regular?
I believe so, but I will double check perhaps even during this meeting and include that in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Gabby, this is Laura Chavez. So yep, we'll make sure that that is updated to YBN welcome announcement section as well.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks all.
Yep, no problem.
Just to clarify, what was the notification for the change from 6 to 1? Was there a separate text or is that was that information actually in the email?
The emails were sent and the notifications were sent prior to that change in timeline. That change in timeline is very recent, as of yesterday evening. So the way that we plan to communicate that out is by updating the websites, the announcements that are posted there for folks so that they can observe that. I think the good news is that weekends are a little bit lower on traffic, particularly on Sundays, and Benefits Cal will be down. And so we think it'll be okay for the deployment, but the notification channel to your question is planned to be announcements on the website and social media. Yeah.
Okay. And then Laura confirmed also on the YBN landing page. Thank you. Okay. Okay. I think we've already called.
Can I make a public comment? This is Jennifer.
Yes. Oh, hi, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. So going back to that schedule of the SMS messages, is there any way we can alert people that the time has changed? Because if people have already gotten a message saying it's going to be 6 p.m., they're probably not going to plan to go double check a website to make sure it hasn't changed. So it seems like if there's a change happening, we should be proactively alerting people that they're going to have less time to access the website. So is there any way to do one more either email, push notification, or SMS message to let them know it's actually 1 p.m. tomorrow?
Hey, Jen, we will look into that, and Laura, Gabby, if we can coordinate with DPSS, if that is a possibility on our side to be able to do one more push notification this evening or first thing tomorrow. We can investigate that, Jen, and loop back on that.
Thank you. And thanks for bringing this back from the last meeting. I know we'd said before that we were going to get the information a little bit earlier, but I appreciate being presented here.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, thank you. I think we're moving on to the next item. This is a corrective action plan to address Madeira County production claiming issues.
Yeah, and before we go there, I think Madeira County was just one of the counties that were bringing up some ongoing claiming issues and reporting issues and things like that. So they're called out here because that was in the particular action item, but I think some of the concerns are a little bit broader than that. So we thank Madeira County for making sure that they were raised, and we put that in the action item, but it's a little bit broader. So Keith is going to give an update on what the team's doing.
Correct. Next slide, please. Thanks, John, for that setup there. Correct. This gave us the opportunity. The concerns are kind of broad across counties, but meeting with Madeira County, we had the opportunity to confirm a number of these, get a little bit more details on them, and then correlate them to open defects or known defects that we currently have, respectively. And just as a background here, the reports team has been supporting the C4 counties after we've gone live. We initiated what we call the CalSAWS state and fiscal reports meetings. Those are occurring, they initially were occurring after go live about on a weekly basis. Now they're done on a every other week, or we call it a bi-weekly basis. In these discussions or in these meetings, we talk about a number of things. What are the upcoming system change requests to the reports? What are the relevant defects that are impacting the counties? And then respectively, any updates that we have to reports where we think it will be information for them, informational only, we convey this type of information. But also what we do is we listen to the counties. We're getting a lot of information either before the meetings or during the meetings. And so we listen to the counties. And if a ticket is not identified, we ask the counties to do so, to log a ticket so that we can track that, we can analyze it, we can triage it, and we can respond back. And it's important for us. And then we can correlate these types of incidents to others that may already be known. As a result of these meetings, we always send out detailed meeting minutes that really highlight everything I just talked about. Our plan here is we're going to continue on with these meetings. We feel it's a good opportunity for us to continue to do so. As we're getting information like the ones that we've received from various counties and Madeira respectively, we incorporate that into the meetings. And for example, the discussions that we've had with Madeira just recently, we can incorporate those into the discussions that we plan to have next week, next Thursday, with all the counties respectively. What we're also going to be doing here is we're going to send out call it a one-time communication to the counties, which kind of highlights a number of things. Everything that I just said in terms of what we do and send the meeting minutes, we're going to restructure that a little bit. We're going to identify what's currently in production today, what's upcoming, and then some resource information, like are there training guides that have been provided in the past so that they can help themselves access those if they do need help. So we're hoping that if we're able to put this information out as part of that one-time communication, and then also restructure our meeting minutes, that the counties can take this on a bi-weekly basis as they're receiving it and communicate respectively. And so that is one thing that we're going to plan to do, is restructure the meeting minutes and get a communication out to the counties, and then continue to support the counties respectively. I think we heard Arnold say earlier, mentioning on this topic, we're continuing to support this for the C4 counties, and we clearly will be supporting it for the Cal counties after they go live. So every opportunity that we see that we can enhance the process and make this better, we're certainly going to do so. And with that, I'll pause to see if there are any questions.
Hey, Kate, this is John. Just to add in, working with the regional managers felt that some enhanced communication, and that's what Keith was talking about, was necessary on this. And with the effectiveness of the enhanced communication on imaging, because imaging's been complex. Some of these have been training issues. There's been defects. There's been SCRs that have been coming out, and trying to get on that cadence. We figured that the regional managers have requested on your behalf that we have something similar to be able to get out there that's more consumable, because we see differences in the way that counties may be utilizing the reports or concerns associated with the reports. So we want to bring those to close, have one set of communication that's consumable, and then with these bi-weekly meetings, if there's concerns, questions, or even hopefully eventually some best practices between counties that can be shared, that we want to be able to provide that forum and that communication mechanism on that. I think it's back to you, Jesse.
Thank you for that context, John. I think the one theme I keep hearing is, aside from everyone being extremely busy, is communication. Just a real focus on communication. Any comments or questions from our PSC members? All right. Any questions or comments from our public?
Okay, Jesse, one last item on this.
Mhm.
It's really important for us as a project that as counties, if they have concerns on reports or perceptions that there might be something that isn't quite right, or there's a question, to make sure that they're getting in those tickets on those things, because sometimes we're hearing that there's concerns, but we're trying to track and put those into tickets, or else they're not coming in some of the meetings that we're having. So really, we know sometimes organizationally, the people that are working on fiscal reports are different than the users. The users are used to putting in tickets, and the fiscal teams may not be used to putting in tickets and those types of things. And we're just encouraging folks to sort of bridge the gap within the counties, and those tickets are really, really helpful to our team to be able to diagnose these items, to see if there's a training issue, or to see if there's an issue that we have within the system that we need to rectify. So I guess that's one of the encouragements back to the counties is, some of these reports are going to people that aren't used to putting in tickets and doing those types of things like your eligibility staff are. So that's a communication item that we're encouraging the counties and the regional managers to do as they're going out to the counties and talking with the counties to sort of bridge that gap.
That's a great point, John. I think it speaks to the diversity of users when we think about users of the system. And I actually put a note in to reach out to my fiscal friends to make sure this is on their radar. Because again, sometimes when I think of users, I do focus on our eligibility and employment staff. And also a note of thanks to Madeira County for surfacing this concern. Okay, so we asked for PSC comment and public comment. I did not hear any. Thank you, Keith. I think we're ready to move on to our next item.
Okay, so this is going into more of the deep dive around the imaging and the work that is completed for improving the overall performance and addressing defects for both the C4 counties that are in production, as well as we look forward to the Los Angeles County go live this weekend. So this summary is roughly a week old. As we look today, our items complete prior to 4/25 have actually hit 100%. Our last implementation occurred last night. For those items that are to complete after 4/25, we are working with Highland on developing what that schedule will be. We'll have that schedule finalized after we have a chance to have LA go live this weekend and do our white glove service for the following week for both LA and the other 39 counties. If we move on to the next slide, please. So again, this SEV2 and these defects were implemented. So on the first one, the images stuck in OCRQs, that went in last night. On the SEV3, the county code not always being set at point of capture with Highland support. Further subsequent analysis showed that this was a user error where they had done the equivalent of submitting twice, which has caused the conflict that occurred. So we have an open enhancement request with Highland to look at how they can suppress the ability to do that submission twice while things are still refreshing, presenting an error message. And so Highland has taken that away as an enhancement request and will be responding back from their product development team as to when they think they'll be able to enhance the package to do so. We move on to the next slide on the priority enhancements. So this is around efficiency on documenting routing rules or routing rules. That also went in on the 19th. And then the performance test enhancements were implemented last Friday. So those have successfully completed the system test. They're in production today, and we were able to receive positive confirmation from the C4 counties as well that they're seeing the improvements. We move to the next slide, please. So to provide an overview of what we did in the enhanced performance testing leading up to the implementations, that haven't made it into production. We structured the load to be a 39 county load for both the scanning operations that would mimic what the caseworkers are doing, as well as the load coming in through Benefits Cal through the portal, which would be the submission from the applicants. And so we ramped up to the 39 county load, which is the 33%. And then we doubled that load, which represents the volume that we would see when Los Angeles County comes on live this weekend. On the Benefits Cal, we ramped up from 14,000 submissions to 28,000 during the period. And that is actually higher than current volumes, because we forecast that there will actually be an uptick in usage of Benefits Cal as compared to YBN. So we actually added a couple factors on top of current Benefits Cal traffic to account for that intended uptake for Benefits Cal. If we move on to the next slide, what we saw were some very, very good results. From the point where, and this slide breaks us into 3 different use cases. One is through the portal submission, which would reflect submitting through Benefits Cal. The other is where either the worker is doing the scanning on their own, or it's being scanned through the lobby kiosks. So the first one around Benefits Cal, when we were seeing the documents submitted by a Benefits Cal, the documents were linked to the case within 15 seconds. In reality, for the most part, we were seeing sub-second response time, and that's when the document would then be available and visible to the user or the caseworker. So that would mean that if the applicant is submitting an image or a document through Benefits Cal, it is being uploaded, it is being categorized, and then it is being made visible to that caseworker within 15 seconds. Task generation occurred within 5 minutes, and then it was hit archive within 30 minutes. At all points through that journey, the document is visible to the caseworker. On the worker and kiosk submission, again, what we saw for both of those cases was less than 15 seconds, and really for the majority, it was under a single second. Then we saw for those that bypass the optical character recognition and have the barcode, the task is generated within 15 minutes, and it was archived within 30 minutes. When it was going through the OCR, the optical character recognition and brainware, we saw, again, it was visible within 15 seconds, many times under 1 second. And then the task generation occurred within 30 minutes after the document went through the workflow and went through the brainware product. And then it achieved archive within 50 minutes. So all these times are significantly better than what was being seen in production, as well as in the previous performance test. If we move on to the next slide. So then the other part of Greenlight that we focus on is how we're completing with the training. And this is the preparation of the Los Angeles County workers for the Go Live event this weekend. And these percentages were as of April 13th. We do have some updated that I'll provide some voiceover, but we're over the 85% completion rate for LA County, which is very good. Details are on the next slide if we could go there. So if we look at DPSS, as of the 13th, they were at 86%. If I look at where they are now, they're over that. They're closer to 92%. So they have exceeded the original targets. And there's 2 components. One is for the knowledge workers, which is the heavier, more comprehensive. And that is sitting at 92% completion. And then the imaging light is more for supervisors and administrators. And that is currently sitting at 85 or 77%. So significant progress has been made there. If we move on to the next slide. For DCFS, current completion is sitting at 80%. So we are looking good from an overall training perspective for the Los Angeles County as we go live, or look forward to the go live this upcoming weekend. If we move on to the next slide, please. So then that brings us to the next component of green light or go live readiness, which is where we are with the imports of the images from the existing imaging system in Los Angeles County to the Highland system. And we are on track with those as well. As part of the conversion weekend, there will be a final export and import that will occur over the weekend on Saturday and Sunday. So Monday, when we come in, all of the images will be resident within the Highland software. We move on to the next slide. So then that takes us forward in the fact that, well, preparing for our Los Angeles County go live this weekend, we're also looking at our Calwin counties for wave 1. And these are precautionary ambers, just as we work through the overall export process or the mapping process that Dan had talked about before, and testing out the export, the transfer, and the import process. So from a Contra Costa perspective, progress is being made. 71% of the export loads have been processed. There was a slight pause this week, and we expect it to be complete as scheduled on the 21st. So again, this is more of a precautionary just based upon where we are and some of the issues that had arisen. We move on to the next slide. For Placer, again, a cautionary amber. We have seen an error rate of roughly 2%, and we're now below that and are starting to resume the export process. So the issues that were creating the error rates have been resolved, and we are now resuming it. And again, we believe that we will meet the 5/27 date with the county, but again, out of abundance of caution, leaving it in an amber status. We move on to YOLO. YOLO is in a green status. Exports are currently in process. So all things are going well there. So then if we look at wave 2 with Santa Clara, there are some prerequisites to actually doing the export process that we are working through with Santa Clara. We're also looking at a potential option of doing the exports over with what's called over the wire, or a dynamic sync process, which would be transferring the images over the network versus loading them onto a third-party device, which is called an Amazon Snowball, which basically is a hard drive that you would load the images to, ship the hard drive over to Amazon, then they connect it and then upload the images. So the preferred method is over the wire transfer. And so we're talking to the county about how we can enable that process as well. So we are working through with some of the prerequisites to enable that export process. We believe that we will be fine from an overall schedule perspective. Some of those interim milestones are falling a little bit behind, but we do have contingency in the overall schedule. So then if we move to the next slide, and Tulare, we're green there. They completed their initial export on April 4th. Next slide. So just talking a little bit, I know we've talked about this at multiple points, and the timing of this was obviously going to change because this slide reflects 6 p.m., but as of last night, it's actually going to be 1 p.m. when the messaging is going up on YBN, talking about the migration over to Benefits Cal and being able to reference the Benefits Cal link on Monday, the 25th. We move to the next slide, please. So as we look forward, one of the things that we have been tracking is there are contractual SLAs with Highland, who is the imaging software provider, around the performance of their solution. And so we're taking an opportunity to show where they are as far as their contractual SLAs are concerned with performance from the recent months review. And so there are 3 SLAs that I'll be going through. This first one is around the monthly, what's called the monthly view objective. And that is, if there is a 70 kilobyte image, is it able to be referenced and displayed on the caseworker screen within under 2 seconds? The actual percentage is sitting at 99%. And so with that, the renditions of 70K or smaller over 2 seconds was 20,000. and overall number was about 2.6 million. So the 20,000 was those that exceeded the actual 2-second limit. That met the overall target of 90, the target's 90%, performance was 99%. If we move on to the next slide. The next formal SLA that Highland has is around database transactions. And so this is how quickly the database is being updated. Target again was 90%. The actual performance was 99.94%. So there were over 733 million queries. Of those, 499,000 exceeded 1 second. If we move to the third and final, and this is one of the SLAs that we're encouraging that the consortium works with Highland to review, because if you look at it, this SLA is how quickly Brainware is processing transactions. So the threshold is around 90,000 pages in an hour. At our current production levels, we're not approaching that, and so as a result, the communication is that we should work with the consortium and Highland to recast what this SLA is actually intending to measure based upon current forecasted production loads. We move on to the next. With that, Jesse, I will turn it back to you for questions.
Just one quick item, Arnold, and to go back to the request that Sandra made on SLAs, we'll go and do a summary view retrospectively on Highland as well and include those in there. The performance improvements that we've been working on are reflected here in these SLAs for March. We didn't have as good processing months prior to March, where we did have some SLA misses. So we'll provide that in the summary with the core CalSAWS system performance as well. Okay.
Thank you, John. Are there any comments from our PSC?
I have a comment. This is Sandra Boland. I just want to say, amazing job getting those numbers down to 15 seconds viewable for the documents, because that is a significant improvement from the last meeting. I wanted to ask, so those 15 seconds, when you talk about the 70, the documents that are 70 kilobytes being able to view them within 2 potential seconds, does that mean that any larger document than that will be viewed within 15 seconds?
So yes, you're look at that, and as the documents get larger, there is a natural increase in that view time because it's transferring that over the network. So what that 15-second line was actually from the point that the document is actually viewable to the caseworker versus what's called the rendering time, and that is the process where you actually query the document and it is displayed. So that 15 seconds is when it's viewable versus the view time. Now those rendering times that we see are, and we've been reaching out to the 39 counties to confirm that they are seeing that, or those times, but those are rendering in under 15 seconds at this point, even with the larger document times.
That is amazing. So thank you very much.
And we appreciate, this has been a very tight collaboration with the counties. We appreciate all the feedback and giving us the cases to where you're seeing some of the slowdowns. We know that there are, in some cases, in some counties, where there are some items outside of the system that we're continuing to focus on, either with network or equipment refresh as well, so that we continue to retain focus on this for the 39 plus with LA.
Thank you, Arnold, and also want to echo what Sandra was saying around just the tight work around this. I keep saying every second counts, and just amazing to see the progress there. I do see Albert's hand up. Albert?
Yes, I just have a comment and a question. My comment first is we surely look forward to to hear about a successful migration for LA County over this weekend. We are super excited here in San Diego. We've been tracking this project because it's a very hot topic here locally for us with our decision to use the core system as it relates to imaging, and with the understanding that imaging ties into many other other core functions of CalSAWS. So again, we look forward to hearing about a successful migration and a go live for LA County, and no impacts to the other 39 counties that are currently using the solution. So I again just wanted to say this couple of things, and also what are those what's the plan in case we do see some slowdown to the 39 other counties? Because it's understanding that LA by themselves, they might be transmitting as much information as the 39 combined. So that is just a question that we have. What's the plan in case we see a downgrade for the 39 to accommodate for the output for LA County?
So the first step will be during the course of the implementation event, Sunday night, there's a click through to where there will be just overall confirmation of system functionality for both LA as well as the regression on the 39 counties. And that'll be our first go, no go opportunity to say, is everything green? Does everything look like we're prepared for the Monday morning? Then we will be seeing the Monday morning traffic, and we will have a number of teams in place. First, we have 4 teams that will be going to the LA County areas in the back office where there's scanning occurring, as well as district offices. In addition, the Highland vendor and the Accenture support teams are going to be keeping a very close eye on the back end, looking for the impact of and the flow of those items through the system. What we saw through the performance test was there were areas where we saw the images getting queued up and stuck in the workflow process, and that's where a lot of the focus was put on streamlining those processes and removing those barriers, which resulted in the performance that we're seeing. So we're going to have teams looking at the system as the load is ramping across everything. And from there, it'll be a rapid response to say, are there other performance and tweaks that can be made to the underlying infrastructure, upgrade the infrastructure, or other things to the workflow to rapidly address any degradation that we see there. The other component is that the team is looking at the point of if there has to be a revert or a backup because things are just so bad Monday morning. And the key is going to be there of making that call earlier rather than later, because as all counties are scanning, the 39 counties won't lose their information because they'll stay on the system. But if LA backs out, then LA would have to rescan all those images. And so that's the point to where we'll be very close, especially in those early hours on Monday, as the volumes are ramping up, so that worst case scenario, if we have to call it back out, we call it earlier, so to minimize that amount of rework.
Thank you. Just last question. Should there be a need to have a bridge call for anything during this migration? I would just ask that the Calvin County be invited just for awareness and also for our own preparedness. We're not as big as LA, but I'm pretty sure that San Diego and Orange, we do have many. We are large within the Calvin counties, and obviously we really are tracking this because, again, the expectation of being able to view these images to our staff, it's something that we want to always stay at the same or better. We can revert, so that's really the concern. But again, we know that we will have a successful migration over the weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And to emphasize, we'll continue keeping our eyes on the system performance even as we go through the weeks and consistently look for other areas where we can tune and improve it even more, because we know that every second counts.
Thank you, Arnold, and thank you, Albert. You almost took the words out of my mouth around what should the former C4 counties or the current CalSAWS counties expect. And I think from a process standpoint, I understand that there's a lot of monitoring on the back end, but how can there be a more rapid response? So if we begin hearing directly from the users, let's say Monday afternoon, right? So it may not be directly visible first thing in the morning or even, at noon, but maybe during the week, if this just doesn't, if this causes really adverse impacts on the former C4 counties, what does that process look like? And I think that's the part I'm curious about, knowing that we really want to have a successful go live, but really thinking about what the impact is going to be on the former C4 counties. Before you respond to that, Arnold, I don't know if the questions that James, I think Sandra first and then James were tied into that theme.
Yes, my question is tied into that. So again, we do want a successful rollout, and but we do want to know what does sooner mean as far as timeframes, because anything after 48 hours starts impacting various services that we provide as far as what we can be able to utilize within the system. And so can you expand on what that means?
So what we will be doing throughout the week and over the course of the day is we will be having the team with their eyes on those critical areas of the system, and keeping an eye to see if we're starting to see queues build, for example, or if we are seeing things to take longer through the process. And with that, Highland will be proactively working, and we'll have the ideas on the tuning. What we're also planning on doing, and this is during the course of Monday, we'll be sending out periodic updates to the larger distribution that would include the C4 counties that are just saying either things are good, or if we're seeing issues, what we're seeing, as well as what the action plan and associated timelines are. So we're planning on keeping the communication flowing as we work through any potential issues that arise.
James?
But Arnold, we also have the nightly debrief too that we're going to be doing with the counties and getting direct feedback from those individual counties as well. So it isn't just our technical monitoring, help desk monitoring, but it's also those conference calls as well.
That's correct.
John, for those nightly calls, is that PPOCs, or are all counties invited to that? Or sorry, Arnold.
Oh, that's all right. It from our perspective, all counties are welcome. And so we'll make sure that we get the appropriate distribution if it's not there.
I think the focus might have been LA County, especially as they're doing that, but I think we could broaden the invite list to make sure that our former C4 and production counties are there, should they be seeing anything at all. So we'll loop around and make sure that the invite is inclusive on that.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. I think we would be very keen to hopefully not report anything, but if we had something to report, we'd rather do it sooner than later. James has had his digital hand up for a while.
Thank you so much, Jesse. James Dakota, Region 5. Just a quick comment on imaging and the support that we've been receiving from the project, and specifically for the imaging quick tip videos that the project has produced for us that are housed in the CalSAWS LMS. Just wanted to provide a general comment that staff have been incredibly pleased and very grateful for the support and these videos that you have produced. These are the quick little 2-3 minute videos. They're easy to digest. They're videos that speak about the work that they're doing. It helps them navigate Highland, easier for them to receive the information and apply it. There's been a handful of these videos that have been pushed out. I know we have a couple more teed up for future release. Just wanted to provide some general commentary that they have been received very well, and we're very grateful for that support. And then Arnold, maybe this is the video and the training opportunity that we have also, just to go back to the conversation with the trouble tickets and packaging up those trends and those opportunities and how you can support the counties. These quick videos are a perfect example of things that are very, again, useful for the county. So again, we appreciate that support.
Absolutely. And I know Gretchen and team, as part of that strike force, are incorporating this as well as those means, because we received a similar feedback. And so we're happy that the additional media types for the training is proving to be beneficial, because we know that different people learn in different ways.
Thank you again.
Thank you, James. Before we move on to public comment, I did have a question on the slide 58 on the brainware processing objective. So I just noticed this note here, how I want to make sure I understood the volume did not reach a target of 90,000 pages. Should this former expect any impacts when LA goes live this week with regards to brainware causing any issues?
No, because if you look at how the flows are separated, even with the LA County, we believe that we're going to be below the 90,000 pages per hour threshold. So, and that just based upon the meetings that we've had with Los Angeles County and what the scanning volumes are on those.
Great, thank you. Any more PSC comments or questions? Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, I think we're ready to move on to our next item.
Yeah, it's over to Rachel.
This is Rachel, thank you.
Back again. Just wanted to give a little bit of an update. We covered on some of the LA readiness items earlier, so I'll touch on a little bit of things that are a bit different. But we were tracking a number of areas relative to our readiness, from making sure that the integration with CalSAWS was ready, that the counties had actually completed all of their execution and did so successfully, that we're ready from all of the work that Arnold just talked about from a performance. That was a pretty big effort between the two teams to make sure that that imaging portion was ready to go, that we have our CBOs ready to go. So the team is right now, as we speak, loading in those community-based organizations into our staging environment in advance of the production run over the weekend. Our training has been fully delivered. Our implementation is ready. And then we talked a little bit about those communications as well. So we are at a go for bringing on Los Angeles onto Benefits Cal. If we could move to the next slide. We had talked about this a little bit before on the communications front, and Gabby had pinged me while we were in session to say, hey, I wanted to give you an update on the latest email click-through rate and to see what the open rate was on the latest email that was sent. So the number that we saw before was 50, just around 52%. The latest number, fresh, hot off the press, is 62.5%. That we're seeing that people are opening up that communication. One other clarification that I did want to share as well, while we had some opportunity to go back and confirm some of the communication content, is that the timing was not actually represented on the email. The date of the go live was. So the email should not have caused confusion to individuals about moving it from 6 p.m. to 1 p.m. I think that was, looking back at it, was intentional to make sure that there was some flexibility if that timing did change. So wanted to make that note as well. Now, one other item, hot off the press, I'm going to read this right now, is that there will be an additional SMS that will be sent out indicating the 1 p.m. timeframe. And so that is what we're going to be including, is an additional SMS. I know that that was a follow-up that we will be sending that out. Gabby, anything else I missed? I'm trying to keep up with the chat here on the communication front.
Right, that's right. The text messages will likely be sent out tomorrow to customers to let them know the specific time.
Lovely. All right. If we could move to the next slide. We had already talked about this, but this is just, back again as to what that message is going to look like. to the YBN customers. This will now say beginning Friday at 1 p.m. as opposed to 6 p.m. given that recent request to move the timing up for when YBN would be going down. Okay, Jesse, I believe that is it. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great, and that's good to know that the communications gave you that flexibility. Thank you for the clarification. Any questions or comments from PSC? Have any public comments? Okay. I wanted to know that I think there is just a chat from Jen Tracy around the clarification. Thank you for the clarification, what was actually communicated to the customers. All right, let's move on to our next item, CalWIN Wave 1 implementation readiness status and milestones.
Hey, Jesse, in that chat too, there was an additional item that said, and what about the additional communication? I think Rachel confirmed that there was going to be an additional text message as well. So I think we closed the loop on both of those items, content, and that there would be additional communication.
The clarification, that's great, thank you. Okay.
The power of real-time information.
You're being very nimble.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so moving from Benefits Cal into the Wave 1 county readiness, and wanted to share a little bit about, I gave an overview in the Gantt chart about where things are, but wanted to dive into this a little bit more deeply. So first item I had mentioned about the work plans and the readiness checklist, and this was tied back to risk 262. The county specific work plans are going out to the counties at 12 months prior to their go live date. And as I had mentioned, there has been an evolution in the work plans in that as more details are coming from the dependent areas of the project, that those details are getting incorporated into the plan. And so we have made a pretty significant change to the work plan to add additional content so that the counties will have that information. The checklists are items that the counties are getting at T-10. And those checklists are means of the way that the counties can identify what has actually been completed that we're using to track the county readiness for go live. So the work plan is more exhaustive. The checklist is more so about what specifically has been completed that needs to be completed that we're tracking to say that the county is actually ready. So it's more of those milestone-based items that are contained within the checklist. The TOS teams, which is I think we talked about last month, is the temporary on-site support team, which is right now a temporary virtual team instead of an on-site support team, given the nature that we're in right now, begins to work with the counties once that checklist has been produced. And so the counties have the checklist and then have a team that is there to walk them through at a frequency that's determined with each of the counties. We have for the Wave 1 counties right now, some that are meeting weekly and some that are actually meeting from a weekly and a monthly perspective with the TOS teams to make sure that we are actually keeping track. In terms of some additional items as well, the events associated with the TOS teams are an ongoing activity. So while they start at T-10, I had mentioned that they're actually something that's either weekly or monthly. Wave 2 right now is scheduled to start later this month. So while we're talking about Wave 1 readiness, just wanted to get a little bit of a heads up that Santa Clara and Tulare are going to join the crew. And we're going to be starting those TOS team meetings for Wave 2 coming up later this month. And then the work plan for Wave 3 is going to be delivered coming up in April, which aligns with their T-12 timing. So we're tracking to those dates and making sure that the counties are going to have the work plans and the checklist. And then as I had mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing deep dives into these work plans and checklists to make sure that there is an understanding of what actually each of the tasks mean and what the county's responsibility is relative to completing those readiness activities. Okay, if we can move to the next slide. Wanted to give a little bit of an update on system readiness. And Catherine, you can also, if you're on camera there, you can join me on some of these too. Relative to the system readiness, I just wanted to focus on what's coming up for the next 30 days for the system readiness for the counties. And this is really honed in on getting the application ready, any interfaces ready, what they need to do from getting their reports ready, and making sure that they're ready from an acceptance of the solution moving forward. So what's coming up in the next 30 days? Right now is UAT prep activities that are going to be starting in May in the next 2 weeks. The counties are going to be working with the UAT team to make sure that all of the things that they need to do to get ready, and that's everything from making sure that security information is in, configuration information is in, that they know how to use the tools to track. All of that preparation is going to take place over the next 2 months. The counties are also working on their data cleansing related activities for conversion. So there have been review guides that have been submitted, 3 to date, or 3 that have been provided to date, to make sure that the counties are cleaning up as much as they can prior to go live. So there's less to clean up post go live. The counties are also right now, and I think Arnold had touched on imaging, that there's sample testing that's going to be coming up within the next 30 days. And we do have IVR call flows that do the routing of how calls are actually going to get routed once somebody connects with the county, that those IVR flows are scheduled to be completed by, or not be completed, but the milestones are scheduled to be completed within the next 30 days so that we get that ready so that the IVR system can actually be configured. And then the last item I had mentioned before is there still is county development and refactoring work that needs to be done on the reports. And that's another activity right now that we are tracking with the counties. That's an ongoing activity that will continue through the next 30 days. Catherine, anything you want to add on this, on the system readiness side?
No, you covered everything. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay. All right. If we can move to our next area of readiness on the technical side. And I do want to take one of the action items that I had from last month's PSC as part of this discussion on the technical readiness. There was a question in last month's PSC about providing the counties with information around what hardware and software need to be procured, by when they need to be procured, so that the counties have sufficient information so that they can address it as part of their budgetary process, and then what they need to do to actually procure the work. So wanted to give an update on 3 items relative to this, and this is specific to the technical readiness area. Last year, there were CITs that had been provided to the counties that provided initial information as to what would be needed for the counties around hardware and specifications that need to run CalSAWS. And that hardware includes a number of things. And some of them are going to vary by county. It's going to depend on how current the county systems are. And what I mean by systems is their hardware relative to their laptops, desktops, whether or not headsets could be reused based off of the specifications for CalSAWS, if printers are current and scanners are current within the counties, as well as understanding that network bandwidth. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here a little bit. Catherine, I might have to have you jump in for a minute here. I'm losing my voice.
You're good. So as Rachel was mentioning, whether it's the hardware, it's some of the technical specifications, the workstation, and then also even furthermore looking at some other hardware equipment that would need to be purchased around, for example, headsets within the contact center or the help desk. And from the action item, it's being able to articulate that full list of the necessary procurement that would need to be made across hardware and software for the project for the Cal-Win counties, and consolidating all of those CITs into a centralized document for the Cal-Win counties to provide that one-stop shop of information across the different project tracks. So that action item, we are consolidating that full list, and we will be able to provide that to the counties, to the Cal-Win counties in one CIT, as opposed to parsing out over the past year across, whether it's imaging, contact center, technical areas, into one area.
Great. Thanks, Catherine, for that. And then if we can move to the next slide, I want to give an update on the organizational readiness aspects as well. So we had talked about in 270 that right now the counties have been engaged with the ISS team in closing out any pending questions around the 2B flows for the Wave 1 counties. And so the team has worked with the counties to close out those items on the flows. And now we'll be moving into, as we move forward in the next 30 days, some activities around configuration definition, which I know has been something that the counties have been expressing a desire to want to dive into a little bit deeper on, how are we going to actually capture the configuration? How does that configuration then translate into CalSAWS so that we have it when we need it for production, and even before that, needing it for doing some of the simulation exercises with it in the counties to validate processes. So that's an activity that is ongoing. In addition, right now, within the next 30 days, we're going to have the span over for the counties for Wave 1 that will roll into May to review the change discussion guides that we had also talked about with Risk 270. The team has been now taking the input coming from the readiness surveys that we have collected at T-9 and are preparing now, what does that T-6 survey look like? So that we can understand, has the needle moved in the readiness and the awareness around the communications that have been going out from the counties to make sure that the counties are prepared around the readiness. So that, that survey is coming up within the next 30 days. And then ongoing, the counties are right now participating in the training curriculum reviews. As I had mentioned, we have coming up in the June timeframe, early learning and train the trainer associated with the web-based trainings. And so then right after that is when we will move into the early learning and train the training for the instructor-led training. And so the counties are right now involved through the TAC in reviewing that curriculum and providing feedback about what additional modifications they would like to see or things that would be helpful. And then the counties have received their draft county training plans as well. So we are working with the counties to get that feedback that's going to be ongoing over the course of the next month, is to get the feedback on the training plan, and then working with the counties to make sure that we've got facilities set up for those instructor-led trainings and that we've got all the logistics arranged when we get in person to actually deliver that training with the counties. So with that, Jesse, I am going to turn it back over to you. That is the update for Wave 1.
Thank you, Rachel. That's a lot of really good information. I just wanted to do a time check here for folks. We do have a lot of other items on the agenda and really important conversation needs to happen, but I'm also seeing some information in the chat for people who may not access the chat. I'm not sure if we have time to address all of these questions that have been raised, but I do know that they are in the chat, and I know Laura has responded to at least one piece. Wasn't sure, John, if there's anything else you wanted to add, but I wanted to point out there were things happening. There are conversations, at least on the chat, happening.
Now, Jesse, we'll on the ongoing communication on the cutover weekend, we'll sort of close the loop on those things and make sure that our advocate partners know about those, the additional communication and what's going on. So we'll follow up on those things, definitely offline. I know that we are a little bit short on time, so it might truncate some of our regional updates as well as maybe our state updates, because we do have a couple of really important items that we want to get to, and we'll try to be efficient on our presentations.
Okay, thank you. So any PSC comment on the item? I think we were in CalWIN Wave 1 implementation, readiness status and milestones. Okay. Are there any public comments on that item? Okay, with that, we're moving on to item number 12, CalWIN migration contingency planning.
Hi, good morning. This is Wendy Byron with our QA executive. I'm going to probably probably more briskly go through this topic since we are short on time. And throughout the presentation, I'll ask for Rachel and Arnold to maybe add some color commentary as I go through. I think everyone is familiar now with risk 268. It's our umbrella risk, but just to make sure that everyone has a little context setting. This is about, implementation readiness for both project and county. And really, if it's not on track to meet the respective criteria by the key trigger dates, then the cutover for wave 1 could be delayed or require significantly greater support to help the counties through any outstanding issues. So the next slide, please. So again, this is kind of a reminder to say that we have 8 individual risks that are kind of fall within this umbrella under our main risk of 268 for overall implementation readiness, and everything from batch performance, imaging scalability and performance, county readiness, converted data tests, imaging migration readiness, the GAGR, UAT, and county data validation, report refactoring and ancillary system timelines, as well as the change discussion guides. Arnold, Rachel, Dan, Abby, and Gretchen all spoke to many of these this morning, so we definitely will not go into those details, but just understanding that what we're doing is holistically looking at if one of these or one or more of these risks turn into an issue, then how do we collectively and holistically look at solving for all of them? Because if one, we're at a point in the project that there are some mitigations that can be applied and some adjustments made for each individual risk, but if one thing needs to move, it really impacts everything. So right now we're conducting our planning for doing risk mitigation planning as well as contingency options. And what we want to do is kind of take you through where we are with our planning to date. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we really want to start with risk mitigation, and you'll see draft across this slide, because you really want to say that there are discussions going on right now with Contra Costa with the potential of actually shifting them from wave 1 to wave 2. And we kind of want to walk through a little bit of what this means. So that would mean that Contra Costa currently is scheduled to go live in October of 22 with along with Placer and Yolo. They will be moving to February of 23 to join Santa Clara and Tulare. This would also, what the impact is right now is that because we've already been planning for wave 1, the UAT will still include all of their data, so that we would have Placer, Yolo, and Contra Costa, as well as the 40 county data in for UAT, so we wouldn't lose any functionality there as far as testing. But it would be shifting the delay, the time frame out, so that it would provide Contra Costa more time to prepare. It provides more time for the project to prepare Contra Costa. It also means that the support that we would have planned to provide for Contra Costa in wave 1 would now be really provide to Placer and Yolo to make sure that they are really just surrounded by support so that they could have the best go live experience possible. We do understand that if we did go with this direction, then the benefits Cal functionality would be delayed for Contra Costa customers for about 4 months. So customers and CVOs, it would be 4 months before you get to use benefits Cal. But this is within budget from the side of our project. But we're in discussions. This is marked draft. There's a lot of things that have to happen, a lot of more discussions have to happen with Contra Costa, but this is one of the things that we are discussing and having conversations about. Rachel, is there anything else that I didn't say that you would like to add?
I don't think so. Wendy, you got it all covered.
All right, great. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so as we're looking at contingency plans, so if we are going past doing some mitigations to where we're just making some really small adjustments, but we really have to start doing some contingency planning, there are some real strong considerations we have to look at. And we've actually had some other conversations and gotten some more feedback. So we want to make sure that we are really looking at everything in a holistic lens and the best for the counties. So the first one is, if we are going to do any kind of shifting of schedules at all, we have to make sure that we're trying to time those to minimize, counties going to earlier months or earlier dates than they were. So sometimes the wave terminology might get changed, but we really want to make sure that those dates and the time frames have to prepare are minimized as little as possible. We also want to make sure that the time between wave 1 and wave 2, and especially some of the other waves, there's enough time to be able to recover. So if there's some things that we learned from the first wave, we want to have time to actually make those changes and reinforce so the future waves are better prepared as they go live. We also want to make sure that, around the holiday seasons, it's really difficult because we have staff who are either out or and there's customers who need additional support during those times to minimize the impact to those two groups during the holiday season. We also want to make sure that if we are shifting around times or dates that, the county UAT, the county data validation, and the cutover experience, that we provide additional time in that shifting to make sure that they have a great experience. We also want to make sure that we are balancing out those timeframes for the counties. So if there's data validation going on, there's training happening, there's some other preparation activities that are happening that they are now getting stacked on top of each other, that makes it even more difficult for counties to participate. We're also looking at the timing of when we have our major releases going out to make sure that we're not impacting any policy releases or commitments. And as what I call is kind of like the big math problem, which is making sure that our 84-hour data conversion window stays intact. There's going to be training support, there's going to be implementation support, how to make sure that math problem works out so that we have everything balanced so the counties get what they need. We can still meet our timeframes and commitments. And lastly, the last couple of things is really making sure that we stay within our federal mandate by implementing by December 2023 and being cost neutral. So there's a lot of funding pieces that come into play around that December 2023 timeframe. All right, next slide. So some of the things we want to present to you today are kind of giving you an insight for our working draft models. You're going to see draft all over the place for this slide and the next slide. And really what we wanted to do is we've created some draft working models just for planning purposes. And again, it's really part of our good project management to make sure that we're thinking through what would this mean if we had to make some adjustments. So the models are works in progress, and we're only providing them here just for awareness of the things that we're thinking through of options that we might entertain if we need to go there. So, and I should put this in the giant capitals, if we need to implement a contingency plan, we will come back to this group and JPA and other groups and present an optimal plan that best honors those contingency planning considerations. We want to make sure that we're looking at every aspect and trying to shore up as much as we can. We also know that any kind of change that's made has to have a lot of conversations with our county, state, and federal partners, as well as some advocates as well, just as in relation to how benefits Cal might be adjusted for timing. And then we also want to work with, we're working very closely with any of those counties that could be impacted by date changes to make sure that help them adjust and also help to communicate the change, not to the county, but as they have to communicate out to their county staff on what that change means to them. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so we have 3 working models right now. And so I just want to kind of walk through this, and you'll see again, they're working models and they're marked draft because we don't want people to go away and say, oh, this is our new plan. This is really, things that we're considering. So the model at the top is really, we're keeping that 6-wave configuration. And actually it actually already moves Contra Costa into wave 2 in this model. It's really to shift the time frame out. So we would get 2 or 3 more months of start time and plan preparation time to start in January 23 and end in December 23. It kind of pushes those limits. There's some good things. Again, there's more time, but we have to take into consideration what this holiday looks like, as well as hitting up against those funding constraints in the federal mandates. We also, for working model number 2, this one would entail shifting the wave 1 entirely to February 2023, really providing some additional time for planning. And then we'd have to replan for 5 waves. And with this model, we're looking at ending in November 23. So what this would do was allow about 3 months between wave 1 and wave 2. So wave 1 started in February and wave 2 started in May 23, and then going with a 2-month cadence after that to end in November. The final model, model 3, really reduces wave 1 counties and then replans for 5 waves. So we look at sticking with our wave 1 with Placer and YOLO really going live in October or November, and then we consolidate to 5 waves. The one thing with the wave 2 going in March 23 is that you have 4 to 5 months in between wave 1 and wave 2 to really, shore up anything that we might have missed, to better prepare some of the counties as they go live. We also recognize that there might be some other counties that would be joining wave 2 in earlier months than they had planned. So it would take additional time to prepare those counties as well. With this model, we would be ending in October 23, still staying within our federal mandate and with the funding. So one of the things you'll also notice here is that we've indicated in orange, if in any of these models, a county would move to an earlier month. If they weren't highlighted, it's potential that they would move to a later month. So Rachel, is there anything else that I need to include in here?
No, I think you covered it again. Very thorough, Wendy. Represented the thought process behind this.
All right. So our next steps, we're going to continue our risk mitigation and contingency planning. Again, we're always looking for those mitigations so that, how do we release pressure somewhere? How do we shore up something before we would take on a contingency plan? But we will continue to communicate our updates and plans to our state and federal partners, any potentially impacted counties, and of course, in public meetings and OPAC, we'll be talking about where we are with this. And of course, we'll be continuing to monitor our risk triggers and report progress. We've kind of grouped them into by dates as converted data testing, county readiness and imaging, project readiness, and batch performance. So those are some of the key ones that we're really tracking as far as overall readiness and being able to know whether we need to implement another risk mitigation or actually go to a contingency plan. So Jesse, back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wendy and Rachel, for walking us through the thought process and just really emphasizing that this is basic project management principles with a caveat that this is, a practice of making sure that we have plans, but there is a process on which they are actually triggered. So it's not a actual, like we're doing this, but this is something that we are considering if needed.
Absolutely.
And Jesse, thanks for making that point, because if we ever got to a contingency situation, then we would be working through our governance process and taking one or a hybrid of these models and working through that based on the facts on the ground. In regards to the Contra Costa County move, again, we're meeting with them to be able to do that. And we look at that as a risk mitigation item that shouldn't be termed as a contingency, that we're just sort of working through those items. Met with Contra Costa yesterday, and we believe that probably as early as next month, we'll be able to come back to PSC and JPA and be able to see if that decision's been made. And we believe that that's a decision that positively or reduces risk for both Contra Costa as well as the project, with the number of risks that we're tracking right now and working through that, and not diminishing the services that future waves would be receiving. And we'd also have that benefit of going live and getting those facts on the ground and working through that. So more to come next month as we continue to work with Contra Costa on that mitigation step. And then contingencies, as you said, hopefully it's just sort of shelfware that we put out there we don't have to use. But if we do have to use it, now we have models that we can take the facts and work through that with the counties, sponsors, and the facts on the ground to be able to customize the right plan. But we wanted to have those things thought through so that we were not starting from scratch if we got there, but we're not there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John. So do we have any, found, so Clarissa from Region 1.
Yeah, quick question on the 84-hour cutover window. I know you mentioned earlier that we're going to try to make sure that it stays within that 84 hours. But do we have a contingency plan in any of the waves should the 84 hours not be sufficient?
Clarissa, I think we're looking at that right now. I think Keith or Arnold talked about some of the testing that's going on. We're going to be doing mock conversions to see where we're at. We're looking at alternatives to say if there is data that hasn't been touched or historical data over a period of time, is it okay if that data could come in later on that? Are there some things to be able to expand that downtime to be able to complete that and have counties use those manual procedures during an expanded time period? So I think it's sort of the facts on the ground as we do that. I know for Santa Clara specifically, being a very large county, how will that impact you all? We have to get more facts through mock conversions. We're looking at the historical data and some options associated with that, and to work through that and where we're at with that additional testing. So Keith or Arnold, is there anything you want to add to what I've just mentioned?
Hey, John, no, you covered what I was going to do, which is we're going to have the mock conversions coming up in short order. That'll help inform where we stand with it in regards to that 84-hour window and help inform as to what other steps that we're taking. We're not waiting for those. We are evaluating those other options leading up to it as part of that contingency planning process.
So at game time, when we're going live and we see that the 84-hour window is gonna get extended, do we just go back to manual?
Yeah, there's a whole cutover process, Clarissa, over that weekend, where we're going to be giving you updates on how we're proceeding, whether we're ahead schedule or behind schedule. It's a very, very detailed plan where each one of the counties will know, are we ahead of schedule? Are we behind schedule? If we're behind, how far are we behind? And what is our projected end time? So that, people don't come in and say, okay, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, we're ready to go to work, or 8 o'clock in the morning. It might be, hey, we've done our projections as we're going through that weekend, and we don't expect the system to be up until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, so that you guys can have planning as early as possible that says when you arrive on Monday morning, the system won't be available. It's projected to be available at 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning. So those types of communications are already planned out through that weekend so that executives in the county are updated and you guys can make your plans as we go through that. The other thing that takes place over that cutover weekend is usually the evening before, we have counties come in and do a click through to make sure that everything's there. And timing of that click through is fairly fluid as well. And that monitoring across that cutover weekend, there'll be a detailed schedule that's provided, just like we did for the former C4 counties, to be able to do that.
Thank you. I do have one more question around the contingency planning. Should any of the contingency plans be in discussion, specifically those plans that include some counties moving ahead? Who is part of that discussion as it relates to which plan is going to be implemented? Is it this team? Is it presented here? Is it discussed here? Who makes that call on, we're going to go early, we're going to go later?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is we wanted to get the models out there so we had something to sort of gravitate to and start to customize. Yes, PSC and JPA are going to be brought into this, as well as the WCDS subcommittee. But there's going to have to be some of those conversations that are happening with the individual counties, because we know you have communications with your employees, with your labor organizations, with your board on those things. So it's really, if we were to get there, we know that the communication is going to have to be sort of all hands on deck to be able to look at those items to see where we're at and what flexibility we do have and don't have. But it will definitely come back to our public forums, WCDS subcommittee, PSC, and JPA, to talk about the facts on the ground, where we're at in communications with each of the individual counties, and where we believe we are on that. So we do not want to do anything to the counties. We want to do something with the counties. And we know if we're in a contingency situation, there's going to have to be a massive amount of conversations that take place. We're not there, but we have the models just in case. So we have something to customize to. I think these are something for counties not to get wound up about, but also to sort of look at and say, hey, if something were to occur, orient yourself to that, understand that. And that's why we wanted to bring to this public meeting to get those things out there. And should we get there, I want the team to spend time on mitigating the risks, not looking at contingencies, but we have to do that as good managers. But maybe the counties can take a look at those, see how you're feeling about those items and stuff like that, and then help us mitigate those items. And hopefully we don't have to make those major changes and institute those contingency plans.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Clarissa. Any other comments or questions from PSC? Do you have any comments from the public? I wanted to call out, there is a question on the chat, which I think, John, you did address around timing. So I think one thing for folks to remember is this may be an ongoing conversation, and it's not like a hard, it says here, when would a decision be made moving on? I can't even read anymore. When would a decision be made on moving wave 1 out? Will it get any update on this before the next PSC meeting?
On moving Contra Costa out of wave 1, we're in active conversations with them. I think we owe some conversations with YOLO and Placer on what that means. So there needs to be some follow-up specifically with YOLO and Placer and talking with that. We've had more conversations with Contra Costa on that. So we will be talking before the next PSC, making sure that what does this mean to YOLO and Placer? And I think it's all positive things for what it means for YOLO and Placer and additional support and those types of things. So we'll have those conversations, and we do expect that we will be coming back to the next PSC with where we're at with Contra Costa, as well as the project saying, you know what, this is a good idea, and whether we're proceeding or else if anything's adjusted on that. But we wanted to bring it here, make sure PSC, JPA knows about that, but we do owe some conversations to Placer and YOLO as well.
Thank you, John. I wanted to just highlight, we're almost at the halfway mark, and we do have a fair number of other items. So I don't know if people would need to make adjustments to the items or do a brief without shortchanging the content. I think we may need to make a change on regional, but we do still have other items beyond. They'll take us more than the half hour.
Can I make a suggestion? The retrospective on the C4 Go Live, there's some very good materials there, and the teams work real hard on those things. But I think that that's an item that PSC and public can take a look at those slides, and we can push that off to next month, knowing that we are utilizing those lessons learned as we go to CalWin, and we can maybe defer item 13 until the next meeting, knowing that the content's already there and being able to do that. I'd maybe ask Abby if she wants to come on and maybe give a little bit of context as people read this, and we defer till next month to see if there's something that she wants to share real quickly.
Yes, thank you, John. So in a previous meeting, we shared that the project was conducting retrospectives on C4 migration implementation activities. There was a lot of interest in how those lessons learned will be brought forward to the CalWin implementation and influence how the ISS team will conduct their implementation, change, and training activities. So this section is really to bring you an update on this. And what we did was we grouped themes that came out of the C4 retrospectives. We analyzed the recommendations, and then the ISS team brainstormed on ideas and identified specific actions by work stream. So this section really goes through by work stream what our specific actions are for the ISS team and how we're going to address the lessons learned that came out of the C4 migration retrospectives. So I know we are short on time. So like John said, what we'll do is provide the materials to you, and then perhaps we can come back to you next month and see if you have any questions on this.
Great, thank you, Abby. Yeah, we definitely, everybody take a look at that. The team's working hard on this, using this, and we'll come back next month and loop back around. Thanks for the flexibility, yes. Abby.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. And yes, we don't want to shortchange the retrospective process and all the learnings that came from that process. So at this point, I think we're moving on to CalSAWS release and policy update. Karen and or Lisa.
Yes, good morning again.
Go first. Sorry.
Yeah, good morning again. I'm just going to be brief because I actually have a quick topic. I wanted to key into some of the earlier conversation, and we heard comments from both Cindy and James around tickets and communication. And we're actually pulling on that thread a little bit because we did have some examples this week that I think are very relevant, related to there was a change in timing for the Medi-Cal RE packets and the NEC notice going out. And it was clear that there was insufficient communication to the counties and clear communication as to those changes and when they're occurring. The end result of that opaque communication, or lack of communication, was tickets. And not only did the tickets come through the local help desk, they made it to central, they made it all the way to the development staff. So this is definitely an opportunity that we want to hone in on as we relook at the strike team and the communications that are going out, the right forum to the right people at the right time. And that covers not only the CITs, but it covers the release notes as well. And in this case, we had insufficient release notes as it related to the NEC. So we did want to acknowledge those two items from earlier this week, and the resulting tickets that could have been avoided. Everyone's time is precious, and we want to make sure that those tickets that are coming in are things that are issues or potential issues versus things that could have been rectified by clear communication from the outset. So I just wanted to acknowledge the comments from earlier and those two items from this week.
Thanks, Lisa. Taking a look at the upcoming releases on our schedule, I won't drain this slide in the interest of time. Suffice to say that this past month, as well as this past month, we did a lot of policy-related changes. You'll note the ACL numbers there, as well as running a number of priority releases to help catch up changes, for instance, for the FPL COLA and the CalFresh emergency allotments, to make sure that we are continuing to keep those up to date. And then as we move into April, we have a set of priority releases, again, to help support the implementation dates of various policy activities. And down at the bottom, you'll see that we, as Rachel mentioned earlier today, we do have the Benefits Cal 3.0 getting ready to go out. And that has a number of different changes in it that will help be very beneficial to the customer. As we look ahead to May, we have, policy continues to roll. So we do have a number of changes there, as well as additional changes that will go in for the GAGR in preparation for the CalWIN counties. And we will continue to run the CalFresh emergency allotments as long as that is approved. And then in July, the quick rundown is we already have a number of items that are beginning to get scheduled for those. They're currently in getting into build. And I just want to mention that as the May revise comes out, we will be taking a look to see what impacts that might have on any of the work that we currently have in progress, if there's any changes to that, and we'll need to adjust accordingly. And we'll keep this group updated in the next monthly meeting in May for as much information as we have at that time. So that's policy in a quick update. Back to you, Jesse.
Thank you, Karen and Lisa. There was a lot there, so I just don't want folks to think that just because it was short, there's a lot of things that they did cover. So any questions or comments from our PSC members? Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, let's move right along to multi-factor authentication, MFA.
Thanks, Jessica. This is Mike Tambakian.
Oh, hi, Mike.
So we are working on the MFA SMS texting option. We sent out a CIT to the counties that wanted to opt in for this feature. The test timelines currently for this, on April 25th, we will be rolling it out to our internal project staff for testing. Thereafter, on May 2nd to May 13th, we'll be working with our pilot counties to test it out. After that, we will be going to production on May 23rd, and we will have a bridge line for the first week to handle any issues or any questions that the counties may have. Any questions on this one?
Thank you, Mike. Questions or comments from our PSC? And this is a great, thank you for having this option for text. This is a great alternative just in case when email doesn't work for folks.
Yeah, we did hear some counties had issues with email, so we wanted to make sure we got it out there real quick.
Any comments from the public on this item? Okay, great. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. You want to go back one? There was a couple of SCRs, so I'll be quick.
Oh, got it.
So there was two more items here. One of them is the SCR to enhance MFA enhancement to reduce the number of MFA requests per day. So we are looking at some potential solutions and reviewing with security the options that we have before we move that forward. And then the third SCR that we have for some of these enhancements is the 20-minute timeout that we have, the consistency across applications. We are working with our vendors to for the requirements to get that in place as well. So that's in progress. And that's it. Thank you.
That's it for real now. Any questions or comments from our PSC? Any public comment? Thank you. Moving right along to procurement update.
Thanks, Jesse. We're moving along on schedule. We have started to get on a flow basis comments and questions in from our state partner reviewers. And we're getting a number of inquiries from the vendor community. And our vendors seem to be reaching out to some counties and to some state folks to get perspective before the RFP drops in July and we go into the procurement cone of silence. So that's our procurement update. Back to you, Jesse.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from PSC on procurement? Any comments from the public? Thank you. We're now ready to move on to next item, CalSAWS conference and GPA member reps meeting.
All right. This is Wendy. I'm back again. I'm sure John will join me as well. I think June is out on vacation this week. So we asked you after our January 2022 JPA member representative conference, and we asked you, how did that go? What would you like differently? And so we got your feedback, which would included separating out the business and conference sessions so that, really to provide more time, potentially conducting over 2 days as opposed to one, and then providing a lot more time for topic discussions in some forums so that we can actually have some interactive discussions about the topics. I think sometimes we have been able to provide a ton of information, but it has been very much on a push basis with very little time in between for conversation. So everyone that we got feedback from really requested this interactive discussion time. And then to be able to really focus in on those hot topics that are for the counties. Go to the next slide, please. So what we're proposing, and we really want to get some feedback from you as well, is a 2-day conference. So on day one, which we're projecting for June 22nd, we are still figuring out the time of the day, we'd actually hold the business meeting. And this would be the JPA board and PSC representative elections. We would conduct the JPA board business and provide some procurement updates. In this meeting, all the Brown Act rules would apply because it is a proper business meeting. On the second day, which would be on June 23rd, which the CalSAWS conference is currently planned, that would be an all-day session from 8:30 to 4:30. We will have general session for major topics, and we'll have morning and afternoon breakout sessions. This will be an open forum for all attendees. So the Brown Act rules would not apply for this. So there would not be a moderator asking for PSC or JPA comments or for public comments. This would be really more of a true conference style. And because it would still be virtual, we would be able to allow up to 1,000 participants. Next slide, please. So just to give you a preview of the day one agenda, really this again is all about the board meeting, calling to order. The guest speakers with Accenture, Deloitte, and Gainwell would be providing some comments there. We would also have the nominations, elections, appointments of the board and the steering committee members, approving the budget, looking at contract items, the consent calendar, procurement updates, get an overview of the next day's conference, and then adjourn the session. We're looking at probably about a 2-hour session for the business meeting for the second day. And so the second day agenda is actually really more geared to the participants and making sure there's a sufficient time to talk about important topics. So we would start out with, of course, welcoming and opening the conference. We would spend some time giving some legislative updates and upcoming releases, really looking at that implementation plan and roadmap, spending some time about how are we progressing along, not just with our, getting everyone to all the Calman counties to CalSAWS, but what's coming up for all 58 counties and what does that look like? After a short morning break, we would come back and have breakout sessions. And you'll see the sessions that are listed here, and they would be separate individual sessions that would be span 90 minutes each to give time for topics to be presented, some panel discussions, and some good Q&A. So the real conversations can happen on these different topics. We would break for lunch, come back, and we're proposing potentially a guest speaker. And then our idea and cultural transformation updates, we'll take a quick break and we'll have exactly the same sessions in the afternoon so that people can attend sessions that they didn't get to in the morning. And then we'll have a general conference closing. This is absolutely a proposed agenda. We would love to hear feedback from you, but we are trying to make it interactive, trying to really hone in on those topics that are really important to the counties right now. And really just provide time for conversation as well as just information being delivered to you. I think that's all I have. Back to you, Jessie.
Thank you, Wendy. And just really appreciate the thought that went into hearing the feedback and coming back with a proposal. I think one of the things that we heard is that you are speaking to so many different types of audiences and creating and developing something that meets multiple needs from our county executives down to our technical experts. I think this is a good starting point. So if it's okay, if we just move back up to that slide real quick. And I just wanted to ask, is this, just knowing that we are pressed for time, what is the process for which to get feedback? If it's not possible today, I mean, I will be getting comments from our PSC members, but they may also want to digest.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, Wendy.
No, please.
I'm thinking that the best way to do that is back through the regional managers. We want to confirm those breakout sessions with the regional managers that they're on the topics that are most relevant to the counties, production counties, as well as migration counties. We're looking at these breakout sessions being panel discussions where we'd have project as well as county participants on there. It would be not a lot of PowerPoint content, but we want to set the context. And then we really want to see if we can get counties talking to counties on best practices, on questions and those types of things. So allowing that 90 minutes for that dialogue. So Jessie, getting that feedback back to the regional managers as we come back and start setting up what those breakout sessions are. I want a word of warning and assistance that I need from the PSC. As you can tell from this meeting, we have so much on our plates right now. We think that the conference is a good communication mechanism to share information, get counties talking to counties about these important topics. But you'll notice that we have the same topics in the morning and in the afternoon so that we could manage this from the project and not have it take away from our day jobs and what we have to do. So I would resist the urge to, have different sessions in the morning and the afternoon and things like that, because we really want to try to keep it somewhat simple, dip our toe into this pond and make sure that we remain focused on our risk mitigation and system activities, but also responding to what PSC told us. Let's make this more interactive. Let's make sure that it's an ongoing dialogue and that we're learning from each other. So again, back to the RMs, but with that word of caution, please.
Thank you, John. And there was a question about the capacity. Is this 1,000 for all, adding all those breakouts, or for
Yeah, so total, total 1,000, because that's the limitation of Zoom, is to be able to have 1,000. So, ideally it would be an even spread across those breakout sessions, but honestly, we could have 9 people in imaging if everyone wanted, and the other 100 distributed to the others. So it's just a total of 1,000 that can be participating at any time. Yeah.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from our PSC members? Any comments from the public? All right, thank you, Wendy.
And this would be open to the public as well, Jesse, just to let you know.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that's a good point. We're now moving on to key state IV&V activities.
Good morning. I will keep this brief in light of time. So the areas on the slide are the areas that IV&V is covering. So the first work stream is the imaging stability and performance. That's been discussed, in today's meeting. We're looking at the defects and improvements in queues. Everything's been looking very good, which is a positive movement forward. Second area is the Los Angeles cutover, which is happening this weekend. We will be keeping an eye on that. We're very encouraged by the progress that has been made, and are looking forward to Monday when Los Angeles rolls on. And third area is CalWIN converted data testing. We're continuing to monitor the GDS 6 and 7 testing that is continuing to happen, and performance, batch performance and improvements as continuing to scale up to a 58 county load and that 10-hour batch window. The fifth area is the CalWIN implementation readiness and how the CalWIN counties are preparing to move from CalWIN to CalSAWS. That does include the UAT planning prep and activities and the change discussion guides. Final area is just the continuing and ongoing development and implementation for CalSAWS and Benefits Cal. And we continue to just monitor the project's risk and issue management processes. I can answer any questions if anybody has any for IV&V, but if not, I will turn it back over to Jesse.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from PSC? Any public comment? So at this point, we move on to our state partners. From OSI.
Good morning. This is Steve Zaretsky. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Really quickly, OSI is happy to report that we have received approval on the CalSAWS annual APD update, both from FNS and CMS. We received approval earlier this month for both, actually one of them yesterday. So we're in good shape there. As Tom mentioned, the M&O RFP is currently under state review, and we are working towards federal submission and a walkthrough for our federal partners in mid-May. And we also continue to work with DHCS and CalSAWS and preparing for the formal CalSAWS certification with CMS, which will take place on May 10th. And we are actually scheduled to do a dry run of that effort later this afternoon. All I have.
Thank you. Do we have anyone from CDSS?
Hi, Brittany Blake from CDSS is here. Just
Morning.
really quickly, we sent out messages to clients this week regarding CVV, EBT cards and reactivating. So that was done. And then also just the staffing change. Jessica Abernethy is now our Bureau Chief in the Automation and Innovation Bureau, replacing Rocky's old position. So we'll be currently hiring for the chief under Jessica soon. And then we continue to work on policy efforts with SAWS partners. That's all we have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Do we have anyone from DHCS?
Yes, good morning. This is Katie Mead from
Morning.
DHCS. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just a couple of quick announcements. The first one, just reminding everyone that the older adult expansion is still on target for May 1st, 2022 implementation. The other item to bring up is on April 15th, CMS did extend the public health emergency. While we don't have a official end date, if you will, we are still working with your counties as well as with the CalSAWS partners to ensure that once the PHE is lifted, it is as smooth of transition as possible to get back to pre-pandemic processes. That is all I had. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think we may have a little bit, okay, before I go on, any questions from our PSC members? Or comments? Any comments from the public? Okay, we may actually have some time for abbreviated regional updates. So with that, I'll tee it up for Region 1. We have agreed with Clarissa that we are going to submit our updates by email to enter into the record. So with that, I'm moving it on to Region 2.
Good morning. So this is Eduardo, I'm in Sacramento County. So really quickly, just for Region 2, counties are moving back to a lot of services that were pre-pandemic. So a lot of kind of looking at processes and whatnot. Quick updates, Calaveras County is working through refactoring their business process to meet functionality of the system. Nevada County is moving away from an SCIU model and creating an early fraud prevention plan. Placer County is reviewing period for their CDGs and moving along through a contact center design and document imaging. And Sutter County is working with their Welfare to Work, refresher trainings, flow and case management. Yolo County has begun their last induction training pre-migration at the end of March. And Yuba County is currently shifting staff in preparation for the new business model and implementing current system in conjunction with CIA to move forward towards first contact resolution. So that is all I have for Region 2. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome again, Eduardo. Region 3.
Hey, this is Rachel from Region 3. So I do have some updates for our counties. Butte County reports that they've moved their Paradise office and it has reopened. They also currently have a training class for eligibility workers. Colusa County is in the process of hiring a housing program manager. Humboldt County has a current class of mixed eligibility worker and integrated case workers in process. Lake County reports that they've actually created a second training unit, a transitional training unit to move their eligibility inductees into once they get to a certain accuracy. Lassen County reports that they are actually down 50% of their staff in the integrated caseworker classification, which is a significant impact. For Mendocino County, we do currently have an eligibility induction class going, and we recently completed our CalFresh management evaluation and are working on addressing our findings. Shasta County has some office openings this month. Their employment services office is opening and their CFET office is also reopening, which houses their GA job club or their GR job club. They also have created an accuracy review team where a group of staff are completing mystery caller and mystery site visits for their quality assurance. Siskiyou County also reporting that their staffing levels have dropped to 50% in eligibility and support staff. And Trinity County is reporting that they have their main office, which is undergoing a remodel, and they have also started transitioning from a managed county to a POP county. And that is it for Region 3.
Thank you, Rachel. Region 4.
This is Fiona, and
just going to run through here real quick and be brief. So starting with Kern County, they recently appointed, their board of supervisors appointed Lito Murillo as Kern's next director, who's replacing Dina Murphy, who retired at the end of March. Kern County is continuing to work through their SOP as recommended by CIA. In Kings County, their agency director is Sonia Begay. His last day is this coming Friday, and they have a new director, Wendy Escopo. I hope I didn't chop up that name, is starting on 4/25. In Mariposa County, they have some movement going on. They have Alicia Finley that recently promoted to program manager, and Alicia will also become the new PPOC for CalSAWS. They have a few recruitments going on, recruiting for eligibility supervisor, eligibility specialist, and a system support analyst. They have a few trainings going on, which include intake, RD, RC, and RE processing, and they have active shooter training coming up in May. For Mariposa as well, their COVID response, they're no longer requiring testing on a weekly basis. They're strongly recommending masks, but they're optional. Regardless of vaccination status, and there is an exception if it's a healthcare setting. A fun fact to share about in Mariposa is their very own Dr. Eric Serginko, I hope I'm not chopping that up again, and Christina Allen and Andy Carter are presented at the Regional COVID-19 Response 2022 Preparedness Summit in Atlanta, Georgia. Really a huge honor for their team and very well deserved. And it's officially outreach season for them. They have many fairs and events coming up in the next few months that they're looking forward to getting out in the community. And then last is San Luis Obispo has some induction training classes starting up for their employment resource specialists, and they have many department vacancies are high at 44 vacancies. Some of those are due to promotion that they haven't backfilled yet. And that's it for Region 4.
Thank you, Vienna. Region 5.
Hi, this is Sandra. I'll try to go through this pretty quickly. So for Region 5, Orange County, Orange has been building up our Flying into CalSAWS campaign and launched a trivia series in order to prepare staff for this change readiness surveys. Orange has developed this first draft for our CalSAWS implementation plan. For Riverside, we're working to supply on-site support to our LA County partners to transition fully into CalSAWS imaging and benefits Cal. We continue with our mass hiring for eligibility technicians and clerical for all programs. The hiring has included some radio ads, flyers, social media, and going to colleges to increase our workforce. For the business process redesign, which is also known as Upward in Riverside, has implemented first contact resolution in 2 offices. Those are our Cathedral City and Desert Hot Springs offices. 2 additional offices will be coming on board in June. Outreach vans are on the road. We were able to assist a homeless encampment in Riverside along with 14 other county agencies to provide wraparound services for these individuals. For Santa Barbara County, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. SBR along with SLO and Ventura will participate in a virtual Children's Memorial Flag event presented by the Coastal Tri-County Child Abuse Prevention Councils on April 22. The flag lies in memory of young lives lost to violence. April is also T-12 for wave 3 counties, and we are seeing a number of county-specific planning sessions kick off this month, such as ad hoc reporting discovery and contact center, along with IVR. We also hosted the CalWinds ISS logistics team for a tour of our potential training sites and preparation for instructor-led training in early 2023. For San Bernardino County, we are excited to support LA County with Imaging and Benefits Cal effective April 25th through May 6th. We will have staff on site to assist. We continue to have great success in our automated assistance with their automated assistance for a period of April, for the period of April 11th through the 15th, we had the following outcomes for the authentication automated assistant. They had 85.1% of callers were successful in authenticating. For the welcome automated assistant, 68.5% success rate in identifying the intent of the call. Push notification automated assistant, they had 13% of callers ended the call after receiving the push notification. And those are all the updates for Region 5.
Thank you. Region 6.
Good morning. So a couple of the updates for Region 6, we continue to hire eligibility staff as our workload continues to grow. We also launched our guaranteed income program. And then lastly, we are preparing for the rollout of Benefits Cal next week. So that's pretty much all I have, unless Luther or DCFS has anything additional to provide.
Nothing to add, Winna, thanks.
I think we're good. LA County DCFS, we're just getting ready for the rollout for imaging as well.
Thank you, Region 6. Are there any comments from PSC on regional updates? Any public comment on regional updates? Okay, John, I think we're at 11:57 and we're ready to adjourn the meeting.
Great job, Jesse. all that material and a couple minutes to spare.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.